Hello, everybody. I'm hoping this is working. Um, this is my 2020 wrap up. Um, I had a really pretty good reading year. My goal that I set on Goodreads was 300. I read 382, so 127% of my goal. I read 102,285 pages. Or at least that's what they say. A couple of them are audiobooks that they only list like 6 pages because if you had it on disc, it would be like 6 discs, kind of a thing. So, and there wasn't an equivalent for like number of actual print pages. There wasn't a print book equivalent listed. Usually I select the print book even if I listen to the audio, but then most of the time I have both at the same time anyway. I'll be reading the print while I listen to the audio. But anyway, there's that. Um, I think this stuff's kind of interesting. My shortest book was 20 pages. Guess How Much I Love You. I thought I had read that before, but apparently I hadn't. So I took care of that this year and read it. I did read quite a bit of children's books, um, especially in September. I had a Dr. Seuss challenge that I was participating in and ended up reading somewhere close to 30 Dr. Seuss books. Let me tell you, that's a lot in 1 month. Move my headphones over so I don't sit on them. My longest book was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, 771 pages. I felt every one of the pages. I think that particular book could have had some stuff trimmed out of it to tighten it up a little bit. For me, it was just too slow and drawn out, and I didn't like the characters enough to really want to spend that much time with them. Um, so I think possibly some of this stuff could have been tightened up a little bit. Knock a couple hundred pages out of that book would have been much more satisfying read for me. I absolutely loved The Secret History. I thought that was a near perfect book. This Goldfinch didn't work for me very well. um, so when you have numbers like 20 and 771, it averaged out to approximately 267 pages per book. Let's see here. The most popular book, I did a reread of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Actually, this was my first read of Philosopher's Stone. My previous read was Sorcerer's Stone. And there are some subtle differences, but, the story's the same. So, not that much to quibble with. Mostly the changes were in phrasing. There would be more British phrasing in Philosopher's Stone versus the more American phrasing in Sorcerer's Stone. But, 8.9 million people have read or shelved Harry Potter versus 6 people shelved a book called African American Holidays, which is a children's book that talks about various holidays that African Americans celebrate that some of them I'd never heard of. So it was interesting. I'm very interested in cultural stuff, so I thought it was pretty cool to get a chance to read something that talked about things I'm not familiar with. My average rating for 2020 on Goodreads was 3.6. Towards the end of the year, I really had a lot of 4s and 5s. I guess I saved up all my good stuff for the end of the year. There were a couple times where I read some stuff that just wasn't great. Ugh. But for the most part, 3, 4, and 5 are what I average or rate the most. So 3.6 is, it's yeah, it's understandable. It's what I would expect. Um, the highest rated book that I read on Goodreads is another children's book, The Little Elephant with the Big earache. I thought it was a cute story. I picked it up out of, I don't know, Little Free Library or out of the freebie box at the library, something like that. But I picked it up because it had elephants on the cover, and my niece loves elephants. So I thought, why not? Ugh, excuse me. I am so sleepy today. I think part of it is I have a little space heater under the table, and it's blowing up and getting in my face, and it just like makes me really sleepy. Anyway, that has nothing to do with what I read. Um, the story is about this little elephant who gets an earache and he isn't feeling well, and the mother takes him to the doctor, and it's like his first experience going to the doctor, and everything ends up okay after the doctor looks at him and gives him his medicine. And yeah, it is a cute story. I think young children would really like it. The artwork was adorable. I think I gave it 5 stars, and it's got a 4.89 average. I'm thinking there's probably only a handful of people have read it or rated it. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. And it was cute. So I'm actually surprised that's the highest rated I had on Goodreads. But if it was only a few people marking it, then that would explain why. My first review of 2020 was for The Geek Job by Eve Langlais. I really love her writing. She's got this really great sense of humor. She does a lot of paranormal stuff, paranormal romance. And I mean, my review sums it up. Humorous, entertaining werewolf smut. I read her when I want something quick, because most of the things I've picked up from her have been really short. So if I want something quick and light and fun, some sort of romance with a little bit of a paranormal kick, I pick her up. I've read several of her books now, and I really enjoy her books quite a bit. This one, the werewolf female, she's like a bodyguard, and she's sent to protect the scientist guy. You can see here in the background, the geek. uh, and it's just, excuse me. Maybe I need some tea to wake me up. I would say coffee, but I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. I need some caffeine. Anyway, stuff happens, and she has to fight off these other people who are trying to like take him for whatever it is he's trying to. I can't remember exactly what it was. He's trying to cure something, I think. Whatever it is he's working on, the other people want that data, and they kidnap him or try to kidnap him, and she protects him. And of course, a little hanky panky. Why not? Smut. So here's my books. I read a lot of mystery thrillers, or mysteries and thrillers. That's probably my most read genre. I read a lot of children's this year, so I would imagine that's probably fairly high, especially with all those Dr. Seuss books in there. Here's another Eve Langlais, Alien Mate. It's just what it sounds like. It's about a human or an earthling mating with an alien. Basically, he comes down from wherever it is he's from, and he's like, I need a mate. I choose you. And he takes her. Kind of kidnaps her, and then they end up married and what have you. But yeah, it was fun. Of Murder and Men is a cozy mystery series by Lynn Cahoon, which I've also been reading another one of her series. This one is set in a book retreat or a writer's retreat. I think I am caught up and have read all of that series. but these writers come in for the retreat, and there's always somebody gets murdered, whether it's somebody who's in attendance of the retreat, or kind of a secondary character, a tangential character. Something happens, and it's always tied to something with the retreat. Dracula versus Hitler, alternate history, kind of interesting, very bizarre, kind of long. It's over 500 pages. One Day by David Nichols. I found that one to be kind of overrated. It's a romance. It's contemporary. It's okay. I have seen the theme multiple times in other forms, and personally, I think the movie City of Angels did it better, but that's just me. The Whispering Room, and there was another. I read 2 out of that series. Jane Hawk by Dean Koontz. I read The Whispering Room and Secret something or other. Let me see if I can find it. Had a blue cover. Thought I read them close together. Did I not read them in the same year? Huh. Anyway, whatever. The Silent Corner. Okay, Silent Corner I must have read at the end of 2019 then. And then The Whispering Room would then be the second book of the Jane Hawk series. Pretty interesting. A lot of action. Former FBI agent. She's trying to clear her name for stuff that she didn't do. My Sister the Serial Killer. It's very short, so I can't really say a whole lot about it. But yeah, it was pretty good. I liked it. Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. I have started to gain an appreciation for Murakami. His stuff is very bizarre. I don't know how to describe it otherwise. It's just bizarre. There's a lot of odd things that happen in his books. Ruth Ware, Turn of the Key, is very similar to Turn of the Screw. There's a lot of parallels there. Pretty good book. I do like Ruth Ware. If you watched my TBR video, you'll know that I just finished One by One yesterday on January 1st, which I thought was appropriate. January 1st, 1/1, and I read a book called One by One. Anyway, liked how that worked out. Gave that one 5 stars. Turn of the Key I thought was pretty good. I liked it. I've liked everything I've read by her. And I think I've read all of her stuff now. The Captain's Dog is about the Lewis and Clark expedition. It's a middle grade book. Shauna McGuire in An Absent Dream. I read a couple of the Wayward Children's books this year, or in 2020. Crazy Rich Asians. Oh my God. The most overhyped pile of crap I've ever read. And what did I do? I turned around and read the second book in the series. I haven't read the third one yet. I need to, just to finish it off. The movie was so much better because I just could not stand the nosy old women who thought they knew better than everything else and were full of shit. I could not stand that book. Definitely way overrated. Did not like at all. I think I gave it maybe a 2. A generous 2. They both die at the end. I liked that one okay. I thought it was a good concept. And I was kind of thinking, what would I do if I knew that it was my last day? So kind of interesting. Little Beach Street Bakery, and there's a couple others that go with it, by Jenny Colgan. I really enjoyed those. Kind of a contemporary romance. Here we have Christmas at the Little Beach Street Library, and I think Summer? Yeah, Summer at the Little Beach Street Library. So I read the 3 that I know of. Let's see. Okay, here's another of the Lynn Cahoon series that I mentioned earlier. This is one of her other series. This is one of the Farm to Fork books, which is about a chef who basically lives on a farm and tries to locally source everything from the local farms to serve in her restaurant. Sconed to Death, I don't remember which of the series that one goes with. Probably the first series with the book retreat. Perfume was a very odd story. And the book was probably a little bit better than the movie, but they were both good. The movie has Alan Rickman in it, so it can't be all bad. It's about a guy who wants to be a perfume maker, and he has a nose that he can like identify any scent, so he can like smell other people's perfumes and be able to replicate it. And he's trying to create the perfect scent and becomes a murderer. It was very bizarre. Let's see, Goosebumps. I read a few of those throughout the year. A Town Like Alice. It's by an Australian author, Neville Shute. It's set in Australia. It's kind of historical fiction. It was a little dry for me. It was fine, but it was a little on the dry side. Into the Drowning Deep, Myra Grant, also known as Shauna Maguire. This one is about mermaids, sirens, murderous creatures. That's all I'm really going to say about it. There's a lot of science in it. Very interesting. I liked it a lot. I also read Rolling in the Deep, I think is what it's called, later on in the year. Isabel Allende, the Ripper, about a serial killer, different from anything else she's written. Victoria Schwab, Tunnel of Bones. I like this series. Now, see, here's the thing. V.E. Schwab, Victoria Schwab, it seems like if you like Series A, you don't like Series B. She's very hit or miss for a lot of people. I didn't care for Darker Shade of Magic. It was too confusing with all the different colors of London, and I got lost and could not follow it. Didn't care for it, not planning on reading the other 2 books. This series, on the other hand, I really enjoyed it. It's about a young girl who's had a near-death experience. She can see and talk to ghosts. Her parents have a ghost hunting show, but they can't see or hear ghosts. And she can. So she ends up getting all into all these predicaments. And very interesting. This one took place in Paris. The previous book, the title is escaping me at the moment, was set in Scotland, I believe. This one takes place in the catacombs in Paris, and I thought it was a fun romp. Yeah, definitely worth it for me. Maybe I just enjoy her younger stuff more. I haven't read a whole lot of her stuff. First one I tried was Darker Shade of Magic, and that kind of put me off from reading her. But then when I heard what these books were about, I was like, okay, I'll give those a chance. And I've really liked them. So I might pick up some others from her. What is this one? Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. Another Australian book. Another historical fiction. Another one that's kind of dry. Maybe it's just the style of writing. But then I've read things by other Australian authors that I've really loved and thought were good and exciting and not dry. So I don't know. Andre Norton, science fiction. Can't really say a whole lot about it. It was okay. Not my cup of tea. I'm not a huge sci-fi person. And I discovered Andre Norton's like a woman. I thought it was a man. What do I know? Obviously nothing. uh, then we had a couple classics here with, Virginia Woolf and Mrs. Dalloway, Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. The only Hemingway I have ever liked. I absolutely despise Hemingway. Not a favorite. I was just reading him to get him marked off of the 1001 books to read in your lifetime, or to read before you die, or whatever that's called. The 1001 list. Gulliver's Travels. Actually, all three of those books were on the list. Gulliver's Travels was alright. I'm actually surprised we weren't required to read it in school. Then here's another Ruth Ware with The Lion Game. I liked it pretty well. Sadie, the first book with a podcast that I actually liked. I keep hearing about all these different books and how they're so great. And they're about a podcast. Da 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 da. I think the podcast element is what I don't like. I could not stand radio silence. And I know this is a very unpopular opinion because everybody loves radio silence. Or at least it seems like it. And I didn't. I was like, okay, I got nothing from it. It just didn't do it for me. Sadie, on the other hand, I was really into it. I think it was presented in a way that worked for me. I like mystery thrillers, and I think maybe that's why it worked, where radio silence wasn't that type of element. Maybe I need the combination of the two, because there is another one coming up later that I liked that also had a podcast element. I finished off the Princess Diaries. Thank God. They started out, I loved the first 2 or 3 books, thought they were great, really enjoyed them. And then Mia just got on my nerves so bad. Whine, 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 whine. Shut the fuck up. You're a fucking princess. Get over it. Don't whine about it. Just deal with it. It got to be to the point where I just couldn't take it. So I finally just managed to force myself to finish the series so I don't have to deal with it anymore. And it's sad because I really enjoy Meg Cabot's writing. It's just I could not handle any more of Princess Mia. Janet Ivanovich, I read Twisted 26, and then I also read Fortune and Glory later in the year. These 2 books happen to focus on Grandma Mazur? Not sure how you say her last name. Grandma. Grandma is one of my favorite characters. Grandma and Lula are my favorite characters in the series. I mean, okay, Ranger is hot, but, his vocabulary consists of babe. And very little more than that. Joe just gets on my nerves at times, so I guess I'm Team Ranger versus Team Joe, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. Make a decision already. Anyway, Grandma is the focus. In 26, she gets married and the guy drops dead. And apparently he had connections. And he had some code and a key. And so through books 26 and 27, they are searching for the code and the key. Meanwhile, Stephanie Plum and Lula are still looking for people who fail to appear for their court dates and what have you, with the whole bond enforcement agent thing going on. The usual humor and weirdness, but when you add more grandma, that just makes the book that much better. So I enjoyed both 26 and 27. And what I found weird is 27, instead of being a numbered book, they changed it to Fortune and Glory. Why the change in title suddenly? I mean, we've gone through 1 through 26, all numbered, one for the money, was the first book. And then suddenly, oh, we're going to do something different for 27. Why? It's confusing. Oh, look, here's Ruth Weir again in a dark, dark wood. I liked it. The Sun Also Rises. Oh my God. Frickin' Hemingway. I'm so glad I don't have to ever read him again, because I will never voluntarily take a class in Hemingway. And I can't see any other reason why I would need to read him. The Bone House is kind of interesting. Fantasy. I love the cover. I like the black cover better than the white cover, because I think the skull design stands out more. I believe the black cover the one I have. I don't even see it on the shelf. I am blind. Might be that one that's all shiny that I can't read. I think it was it L Crate that we got that out of, and had the black cover versus the white cover, which was the regular cover. No, wait. The black cover is the regular cover. The white cover is I think it's L Crate cover. Because now I see it. I was looking for the wrong thing. Anyway, I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't even know how to explain it. Cross Country, one of the bazillion and two Alex Cross books. I don't even know what number they're up to now. That series just keeps going and going and going. And I want to say this is the one where he goes to Africa chasing somebody. Don't hold me to that. That might be wrong. But there is one where he goes to Africa chasing somebody. Island of Sea Women was interesting. Kind of a historical fiction. And it's about these women who are pearl divers. And something happens, and these women who have been like best friends forever and ever and ever have a big falling out, and their daughters or whatever are kept apart, and they were friends, and there's a bunch of stuff, a lot of stuff goes on. Things happen, people die. It's not like a thriller or anything. It's not a mystery. It's just people die. People reconcile. Booked for Trouble. Library cozy. The Good Dream. This one was interesting. Donna Van Leer does a lot of Christmas books, and this one's a non-Christmas book. This one takes place like during the summer. And there's a boy who has been abused. He is kind of fending for himself. He's a young boy, like 9 or 10, I think. And he steals stuff out of this woman's garden. And she catches him and ends up taking him in, gives him a place to stay, food, clothes, takes him to a doctor so that he can, he couldn't speak? There was something wrong with him. They take him to a doctor for treatment, and the woman ends up like adopting him at the end. Really, heart-wrenching stuff goes on in that book. She writes a lot of inspirational stuff. She writes, like I said, a lot of Christmas-based things. I want to say she's the one that wrote the Christmas shoes. She wrote one about a Christmas tree, which was really good. I've read a few of her Christmas ones, and I really enjoy them. Didn't get any of them this year. I didn't read that many Christmas books this year. I just had too many other things going on in December. Another Isabel Allende, In the Midst of Winter. This is a more recent one than the one I read earlier. Carmilla, Vampires. Um, The version I listened to was read by David Tennant. Enough said. Vampires and David Tennant. Whale Rider from New Zealand. Really good story. The girl wants to be a whale rider, but they, don't let her because she's a girl, and only men can do this, and, blah, 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 blah. And she proves them all wrong and becomes a whale rider. And this is her journey of how she got from no you can't to you're doing it. Capturing the Devil by Carrie Maniscalco, part of the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. Liked it. I would have liked a little bit more of the H.H. Holmes aspect, because that's kind of what that's based off of. Passion Untamed, I think there's another one from this series. I like this series. They are shifters, they're romances. It's a world where there's like only one of each kind of shifter left, and different things. There's like, I don't like fairy books, okay, but there are these like evil fairy wizard type characters, and they're trying to steal the whatever it is that makes the shifters shift, and there's a whole series of them. I don't even remember which ones I've read at this point, but they're good. There's like a snake shifter, and there's a hawk shifter, and there's a wolf and a lion, and their names are very creative. Like the lion shifter, his name is Lion. Hawk's name is Hawk. The snake is Viper. I mean, not real creative in giving the critters their names, but interesting to say the least. Hemingway. Ugh. Lolita. Hated it. There is nothing good about Lolita. It's a dirty old pervert, wants to make it with it like a 12-year-old girl. I'm sorry, it doesn't work for me. Didn't like the writing style, didn't like the subject matter, only read it to cross it off the list. Did not like it. And it's funny, I've been kind of looking forward to it because I'd heard all these things about it, and I wanted to know what was so controversial and everything. Well, yeah. I read it, didn't like it. It sucked. Move on. Neanderthal Seeks Human. I really enjoyed that one. Is that the same author that does the Winston Brothers books? The Beard books? I have it in my head that it is, and I haven't read those yet, but I'm thinking about it. I'd like to read the rest of this series as well. But I thought that this one was a pretty good one. Jane Austen, The Watsons, and Sanditon. I kept calling it Sandition, and it's not Sandition, it's Sanditon. Anyway, I wasn't really familiar with these stories. And then they released the miniseries of Sanditon, and it's an unfinished book. These are both unfinished. And so they kind of turned them into novellas and what have you, and they're two of them together. Um, Not as good as Pride and Prejudice, but not terrible. I think they're unfinished for a reason. I think maybe Jane Austen was like, these aren't my usual standard, and so I'll put them on the back burner and maybe come back to them later and fix them. I don't know, but that's kind of what I think may have happened. Yeah, because they weren't bad, but they weren't great. They weren't Pride and Prejudice. Bromance Book Club, loved it. Want to read more. Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood. I preferred the movie. It's okay. There's a lot going on in it, but I preferred the movie. Dia de los Muertos is actually like a little toddler's board book, which I picked up for a friend of mine who happens to be Hispanic and has a little girl who's, I don't know, 1.5 now, I think. And I picked it up for her, but I read it before sending it their direction. And I liked it. It was cute. I love the artwork. I have a thing for sugar skulls, and there's sugar skulls all through it. It's telling about what Dia de los Muertos is, Day of the Dead, and the way that the people of Mexico in particular honor the dead that have gone before them. Saturday Night Ghost Club. I was disappointed. I wanted a ghost story, and I didn't really get what I wanted. There was kind of ghosts, I guess. It just wasn't. It wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't as good as what the blurb made it sound. Oh, look, more of the Princess Diaries. Look, it's the last 3. No more of those. Yay. Actually, Royal Wedding was pretty good. She finally grew up and was less whiny. Fellowship of the Ring. Finally read it. Not bad. Zane Grey, Spirit of the Border. If you like westerns, you gotta read some Zane Grey. Mary Higgins Clark, Melody Lingers On. Just a basic mystery. Not bad. The Timekeeper by Mitch Albom. I've liked some of his other stuff better. This wasn't bad. It was kind of cool to see the significance of the different clocks. We already talked about the Goldfinch. Last Olympian is one of the Percy Jackson books. I don't remember where it falls in the list. I want to say it's like 5. Is it the 5th book? Anyway, Percy Jackson. I like the Percy Jackson series. I thought it was fun. Christopher Moore, Fool. Really enjoyed it. Shakespeare for Squirrels I also read this year, but it was right after my dad died, so I couldn't focus on it. I'm going to have to read it again. I have no idea what it was about, other than people turned into squirrels. Fool was based on... It was a Shakespeare book or play. Falstaff? Is that Shakespeare? I don't remember. It's based on Shakespearean stuff. Michael Palmer. It's a medical thriller. I met him when I worked at a store called Media Play back in 95-ish? 96? 95, 96, somewhere in there. He was the only author we got to come to our store to sign books. I thought he was a really nice guy. He was a big guy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, really friendly. Unfortunately passed away, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think. I want to say it was 2013. His son now writes some of the Michael Palmer stuff and also his own works. This one, I'm not sure where it falls in the timeline, if it was before or after his death, but it was alright. I like some of his medical thrillers. I don't read a lot of them, so I don't know, how accurate some of the stuff is, but he was an MD, so there is that. He actually went to med school with Robin Cook. That was one of the things we talked about when I was the person assigned to assist him during his book signing. Only Love Can Break Your Heart. I can't remember what it was about. It was early enough last year that I just don't remember. Sarah Dessen, I read a couple of hers. You May Already Be a Winner. Young girl, like young teen, 12, 13-ish. I know she enters a lot of contests and stuff, but I can't think too much more. Yellow Moon is set in New Orleans. It's kind of a paranormal thriller, I guess. Absolutely Positively, it's a romance. Raymond Chandler, The Big Sleep. I have discovered that I really don't care for noir. I've tried a couple other times and just, I haven't cared for it. And this is, again, something it just doesn't appeal to me. And Raymond Chandler is one of the big names in the noir genre, so, or subgenre, I guess. So, it was okay. Not my favorite. Two Towers, Return of the King, read the whole trilogy. They were fine. The Hobbit was fine. Although, for whatever reason, Goodreads only displays my first time attempting The Hobbit, which was a really horrible cast recording audio version. And it was abridged. And it was just like they were putting things out of order. And you couldn't tell the difference between the characters. They all sounded the same. And it was just a terrible recording. So I gave it a 1. Well, then I found a recording that was just one person reading it, unabridged, and I read it or listened to it, and I upped it to a 3. But for whatever reason, Goodreads only shows you that I gave it a 1 star. Whatever. I don't read a lot of epic fantasy. It was a fine story. It was a fine adventure. The movies were fine. Again, nothing I was all that excited about. But I finally watched them. For me, overhyped. But then I'm not a big fantasy person. So, Someone Inside Your House, I thought was alright. I picked it up really super cheap off of Book Outlet. Read it. Passed it on. Put it in the little free library. It disappeared. And then about a week or so later, it was back. So, I guess it's making the rounds in our area. Misfit at school. Accused of murder. Didn't do it. Almost gets murdered themselves because the person who did do it comes after them. Standard stuff. Slate with Flowers. It's a flower shop. Cozy. The Test by Sylvain Novelle. Super short. Super short. It was only somewhere around 100 pages. But it was good. There was a lot in it, that 100 pages. It's about taking a citizenship test, a British citizenship test. And that's really all I can say about it. Some of the questions and things lead to dilemmas. And I can't really say a whole lot because it's so short. If I say anything, it's going to ruin the book. The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. Probably my favorite nonfiction of the year. It's about the women that Jack the Ripper killed. So if you're interested in the Jack the Ripper case, I highly suggest you read this one. It's not about him, but it's about the women. And the women are often overlooked. It's more, usually Jack the Ripper books are about the hunt to find the killer. And yeah, that's in here a little bit, but that's not the primary focus. In this case, the primary focus is these are the women. This is what they were going through. This is what their lives were. This is what, life was like in that area at the time that the killings were happening. And, they were people who had stories to tell. And she did her research and she's telling those stories. Yeah, most of them were probably alcoholics, possibly prostitutes, not necessarily prostitutes, but probably prostitutes. Some of them had, diseases and things. Their lives were crap, basically. And this makes them more human and very, very interesting to me. I think if you're going to be interested in a case such as Jack the Ripper, you need to know the people who were murdered and not just concentrate on the killer themselves. Why glorify a murderer? Although I do read a lot of true crime, so I don't know. But it is good to finally get the women's stories out there. It's important. Then we have Terry Pratchett in The World of Pooh, which is about a boy who collects poo. It's short. It's weird. But if you're familiar with Terry Pratchett, you know he has a very bizarre sense of humor and puts a lot of weird stuff in his books. Buried Secrets. It's another cozy mystery. Mind Games. FBI Profiler. Kind of a thriller. Pretty good. Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Really liked it. I didn't know if I would or not. Think I needed a space book, so I picked that one up because I'd heard people say how great it was, and I believe the hype. It's definitely a good book. I have the second one sitting on my shelf or on my library stack, so hopefully I'll be getting to that shortly. I'd like to see what happens. King of Crows by Libba Bray. The Diviners, loved the Diviners series. Sad to see it end. But it was good. Stories by Neil Gaiman. I have a thing for Neil Gaiman. I really like his writing. A lot of interesting things happen in his books. The Royal We, Royal Romance. Conference of the Birds. It's a Miss Peregrine novel. Does it say the fifth novel? So I can't really say a whole lot about it. They're in the United States now. Stuff happens. Firefly, Big Damn Hero. If you've ever watched Firefly, this is like reading an episode of the show. And I'm a big fan of Firefly. I consider myself a brown coat. Even though I didn't come to the show until after it was off the air. I'd never even heard of it until that. And I had to stay with my brother for a little while, and he had it, and he's like, have you ever watched this? And I'm like, no. He's like, okay, well, let's watch this. And I was just absorbed into it, and we sat and watched the whole season, partial season. And I was like, yeah, I got to have that. I was converted really quick. Enchantment of Ravens. I liked it. Another frickin' Hemingway. Ugh. Ugh. Joanne Fluke. Let's go into something happier than Hemingway. Don't like Hemingway. Coconut Layer Cake Murder. And I believe there's another one. Yeah, there's at least one more Joanne Fluke on the list. I love the series. It's up in like 27-ish books now. I have found, though, that some of the more recent books are actually set as more like prequels. So I don't know why they're not listing them as prequels, but rather as like the next in the series. I mean, I realize that's the order they were published, but like one of the Christmas ones, I think, it's the one with the green cover, Christmas Cake Murder, something like that. It's actually a prequel. It's before she even got her shop. It's the book where she, at the end, they finally get her shop. So it's like, that should be like a 0.5 or something. It can't be number 1 because you've already got number 1. So make it 0.5. The Christmas one that just came out, again, not in order. It should fall earlier in the series. So make it like, I don't know, 3.5 or whatever, wherever it falls in the series, make it the 0.5. It's confusing because you think you're getting ready to continue the story, but no, you're going back in time. And it's not like they're reminiscing. It's just, here's a story that should have been published, 20 books back. But I still love it. I like the characters. And I put them on my cookbook shelf when I'm done with them. The ones that I own. I still have a few I need to fill in the holes. But I put them on my cookbook shelf because she's got recipes all the way through them. And some of those recipes are really good. Major Pettigrew's Last Stand. I picked it up because Leanne from Literary Diversions talked about it so much. So I picked it up and pretty good. Don't really know how to describe what it's about. Another Sarah Dessen, another romance. Firestorm, is like the second book about the FBI profiler. It's a thriller. This one, Castle, graphic novel, A Calm Before Storm. Essentially, it's a graphic novel of a novel that Richard Castle supposedly wrote during the TV show, if that makes any sense. I mean, Richard Castle is a character from a TV show. And this is a graphic novel based on a book that the character wrote. Does that explain it better? Anyway, it was fine. I'd rather watch the show Castle than read the graphic novel, though. For one thing, I think it was too short. I've read the Derek Storm series that came out, and they were better than the graphic novel. Jane Austen's Secret Radical. Biography of Jane Austen. I don't really get the Secret Radical part so much from what I remember of it, but it was fine. Return to Fear Street. You May Now Kill the Bride. Actually, not too bad for a YA thriller horror book. Okay, here we go with another Feral Warriors novel, Hunger Untamed. We already talked about them. There's the shifter romances. Ray Bradbury, The Martian Chronicles. One of the few sci-fi classics I really love. I read this one, 1989, I think. Spring of my junior year. During one of my classes in high school. So yeah, I picked it up and did a reread like 30 years later. Still like it. Kurt Vonnegut, Timequake. I love Vonnegut. I got hooked on Vonnegut when a friend of mine, when I was doing my English degree, he's her favorite author, and she talked Vonnegut nonstop. So I finally picked some up and read him. And now occasionally I'll pick up some that I haven't read, and eventually I'll get them all done. Little Darlings by Melanie Golding. I did not care for this one. Changelings. That's right up there with Fae. Not a thing that I'm a big fan of. Another Kurt Vonnegut, a bunch of short stories. I'm not a big short story fan, but I do enjoy Vonnegut's short stories pretty well. Never Let Me Go, Kazuo Ishiguro. Interesting. It was a Man Booker Prize finalist. Definitely worth a read. Off to Be the Wizard. Fun, funny, weird. Zombie Ohio. I tried reading this one a couple years ago, and I didn't have an audio version. I just tried reading it print copy, and I couldn't get into it. And I don't know if maybe the timing was wrong, or maybe there was something about the way it was written that for me it just worked better when I could listen to it. I really enjoyed it. This was a year, 2020 was a year I read a lot of zombie books. And you'll see more as we scroll here. But set in zombie apocalypse, set in Ohio. The guy is a professor of literature, I think. I'm pretty sure because he talked about going into his home and books being stacked everywhere, and I'm like, oh my god, they're in my house. Basic zombie stuff, but it was good. I liked it. The Near Witch. Here we go with Victoria Schwab again. This one, not too bad. Not my favorite. I would rank it above a darker shade of magic, but not as high as the other, the one about the girl with the ghosts. Johannes Cabal, the Necromancer. Interesting. Definitely interesting. I liked it. Kind of a circus situation, if you like circuses. He's a necromancer, so there's some zombie-like and ghost-like characters. I don't even know how to describe it, but that's like the first of a series. Blood Promise is, I don't know, third or fourth in the Vampire Academy series. I finally finished it off. Basically, there's different types of vampires, and the Dompiers are like part vampire, part human, and they guard the vampires, the different kinds of vampires. And the Strigoi are the bad vampires, and it's complicated and confusing to just rattle it off. But a lot of stuff happens, and there's some romance in there that kind of affect the end of the series. The Flat Share, it's a contemporary romance. Two people end up sharing a flat, sharing a bed. One's there during the day and the other's there during the nights because their work schedules are complete opposite. So they don't meet each other, but they leave each other notes and things all the time, and not It's kind of fun. I liked it. Um, Indian Heroes and Great Chieftains. Interesting, but not great. I think it could have been cleaned up and presented a little better. Important to know who these people are. I just think it was a cheap book, and it comes off as a cheap book. Prince Caspian, is that second or third in the Chronicles of Narnia? It's fine. Romanov by Nadine Brandis. I liked it. I have an interest in the Romanov family. I think it's an interesting, intriguing story, what happened to them. The whole Anastasia thing. This is a kind of alternate history fantasy retelling of the story. I don't know. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Lock Every Door, Riley Sager. Kind of a thriller set in an apartment building, and the woman is like apartment sitting until they can get a new tenant or something. But there's more to it than that. You're not allowed to talk to other people that live there. You can't talk to other, apartment sitters or whatever. Everything, you have to do everything in the apartment, and it's weird. But there's way more happening below the surface. Agatha Christie, The Sleeping Murder, and Pocket Full of Rye. Every so often I'll pick up an Agatha Christie. They're classics for a reason. The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I loved this one. This was a fun contemporary romance. This couple is getting married, and the maid of honor and the best man end up having to take the honeymoon because everybody at the wedding got sick except for them because they didn't eat whatever it was that made everybody sick. It was food poisoning. And since the bride and groom couldn't go and they couldn't refund it or postpone it or reschedule it, they had to send somebody to use the ticket. So they sent the two people that weren't sick, who were basically, it's a hate to love romance. They just did not like each other, and they were stuck sharing a room and taking this romantic vacation, basically, and, end up falling in love, of course. Duh. That's why it's a romance. Daisy Jones and the Six. Definitely listen to it as an audio because it's set up as an interview, so it makes sense to listen to it as an audio. I liked it. I liked it better than Evelyn Hugo. But then I also like the band Fleetwood Mac, and Daisy Jones and the Six is very similar to the Fleetwood Mac story, in parts anyway. And yeah, it definitely makes sense to listen to it as an audio since it is set up as like kind of a behind the music interview situation. We already talked about Harry Potter. Jim Butcher, Side Jobs. That's way down the line in the series. I want to say it's like somewhere around book 12. But it's short stories that are like in addition to the main novels. Yeah, not bad. The Song of the Jade Lily. Historical fiction, World War II, and like Chinese involvement that I didn't know about. I think it's girls from China end up in Australia? Maybe? whatever. It was very intriguing, very well written. I liked it. Secret Life of Fat. The science behind the body's least understood organ and what it means for you. Basically, it's saying that some fat is okay, basically in moderation. Because the fat in your body does certain things that your body needs to function. And it kind of goes into detail with that. Another Eve Langlais, Steampunk Cyborg. I don't really know that much about steampunk stuff. I've read a couple that I think fall into that category. And this was interesting. A cyborg shows up at basically some sort of con and starts shooting things up. It was weird. Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. Interesting twist at the end. The movie is really good too. It's got Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo. And really interesting. Definitely worth a read. Doll Bones. Kind of a middle grade by Holly Black. They find some bones and kids find some bones and they are looking for where they belong and try to take them back to where they are supposed to be. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. It was fine. I think the hype is a little overhyped. It was good. I like the Shakespearean aspects and stuff. It was a little dry for me. It was okay. I mean, it's worth a read. Hearts and Other Body Parts by Ira Bloom. Weird. Definitely weird. Good, but weird. The Haunted Bookshop and Parnassus on Wheels, they go together. I think Haunted Bookshop comes before Parnassus on Wheels. Whatever, they go together. They're 1 and 2. Historical fiction about a bookshop. The Babbling Brook Naked Poker Club, Book 1. I was expecting it to be funnier than it was, based on the title. I don't remember anybody actually playing naked poker, but it's set in kind of like a residential place. Like, are they seniors? Is it like a senior residence? Like a retirement village? Something like along those lines. And something happens and these women get involved and try to solve the problem. The Go-Between, I can't even remember what it was about. I think it was about like a teenage girl whose mother is like a soap opera star and they moved to LA from wherever it was that they're from, somewhere in South America, and because her mother gets a job and it's like the daughter and her experience in the school being a newcomer and all that. It's fine. American Sherlock. This was interesting because it's about murder and forensics and basically what it evolved into the CSIs of today. Interesting. There's a lot of different cases talked about, different techniques and things are mentioned. Some court cases talked about, a little scattered at times, I think, but it was good. It was interesting. If you like true crime and nonfiction stuff about forensics, this is a good choice. Winter of the Ice Wizard. It's a Magic Tree House. I almost said Magic School Bus. This is not Magic School Bus. Magic Tree House book. It's the first one I ever read. I think it's the only one I've ever read. It was interesting. It was fine. I'm just not the target audience for it. Rainbow Valley. Shall I express yet another unpopular opinion? I'm not a fan of Anne of Green Gables. The first book was fine, and as you progress through the series, I like her less and less. Something about her just annoys me, and I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe I'm just reading them too late. Maybe it's something I should have read as a child. I mean, they are geared toward a much younger audience. But, I have a lot of friends that are my age that are rereading them and are like, oh, these are great books. Or they're reading them for the first time. Oh, yeah, I really love this. And I'm going, I can't stand Anne. A Mother's Reckoning. Living in the Aftermath of Tragedy by Sue Klebold. She is the mother of one of the boys that killed all those kids in the Columbine shootings. Oh, geez, is that 20 years ago now? Something like that. Heartbreaking stuff. I couldn't even rate it because how do you rate somebody's tragedy, Heartbreaking stuff. She beats herself up to no end, thinking she should have known, she should have seen this stuff coming, but she didn't, and she didn't recognize the signs of something big getting ready to happen. And then when it did, it's about the things that she went through and her grieving and the people who turned against her and people who didn't, who were supportive to her, and just all the things that she's dealt with since the thing happened. And really heart-wrenching stuff. I hadn't planned to read the book at any point, but I'm glad I did, because seeing things from her point of view, and she didn't know her son was, doing all this stuff, and if you don't know it, you can't stop it. So I can kind of see where she's coming from on some things. Yeah, definitely worth a read. Just heartbreaking stuff. Field Guide to Homicide, Cat Latimer Mystery. Okay, this is set at the Writers' Retreat. It's that series, the Cat Latimer series. Like I said, I read several of them. I think I'm caught up on that series now. A couple more Agatha Christie's, Caribbean Mystery, and They Do It with Mirrors. Murder is Announced. Some Ilona Andrews. If you're not familiar, it's a husband and wife writing team. I am getting near the end of the series now. I think I have 2 or 3 left to read. I will definitely be finishing that this year. 2021, finish that series. What Remains of Her. Kind of a mystery thriller. Lending a Paw, it's Bookmobile Cat. Coldest Girl in Cold Town, Holly Black. Vampires. Scott Odell, The Black Pearl. It's about pearl divers. Only in this case, it's a boy who wants to go out with his mentor, his dad, or whoever, and ends up having to go on his own because something happens. Oh, I guess I did read another Magic Tree House book. Civil War on Sunday. They're fine. I'm not the right target audience for that. Dragon's Guide to Making Your Human Smarter. Again, I'm not the right age group for this, but this one I had fun with. I think there's more. I think there's a couple follow-up books. Ghostland, An American History in Haunted Places. I have mixed feelings on this book. I believe in ghosts. I will flat out swear to it. I believe in ghosts. I have experienced ghost-like phenomenon. As a matter of fact, after my dad died in May, I have seen him walking around in the house. And I'm not the only person who has seen him since then. We live next door to the funeral home, which happens to be the funeral home that took care of his cremation and everything. And the son of the lady who's like the secretary over there was clearing brush and stuff and got into a conversation. And he's like, yeah, I used to talk to your dad and stuff. And said, the other day I saw him, he was sitting there in the chair, and I went to say something to him and he disappeared. And I was like, well, that's freaky. That means, maybe there's something here because I've seen him around too. And now I know I'm not the only one. So I believe in ghosts. I have also had unexplained things happen within our house. We have had visitors, which I think come from next door. They get confused and wander around in our house and then go back. I have been woken up by somebody shaking me and there was nobody there. I'm all the time hearing people talk to me when there's nobody here. They'll say my name or something. And I'm looking for somebody and I don't see anyone around. And I'm the only person here and I don't have the TV on or anything. It'll be quiet and I'll hear somebody call my name. Just weird stuff like that. But the somebody shaking me to wake me up and there's nobody there, that's kind of freaky. But I'm used to it now, I guess. I think maybe it was my mom after she had passed, because that's when it happened, was, several times after that. And I'm like, can you stop shaking my foot? And they stopped shaking my foot. But that's how my mom used to wake me up when I was in high school. If I didn't get up before she did, she would come in and shake my foot, tell me to get up. So that's basically, I was experiencing that. This book, on the other hand, Ghostland, it took us to some interesting places, and it would be telling the stories of what's going on, and then the author would be like, but I don't think that's real. Why are you writing a book about ghosts if you're that skeptical? Because you're getting us drawn in, and then you're like, nah, never mind. It's wrong. It's bullshit. It didn't happen. It's like, just tell us what happened. Don't go and speculate. We don't want that. These are the stories that are associated with this location. And they went to some interesting locations that I hadn't seen in other books or TV shows or what have you. I didn't like the way it was presented. Miracle Creek, not really a mystery because you know what happened from the very beginning. It's more of, how did we get to this point? Indigo is kind of a sci-fi thing, and it's written by a whole bunch of people. I mean, you can see the list of names here: Charlene Harris, Christopher Golden, Kelly Armstrong, Jonathan Mayberry, Kat Richardson, Shauna McGuire, Tim Levin, Sherry Priest, James A. Moore, Mark Morris. They are all involved in the writing of this story. Having that many authors, I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. It's hard to tell a voice. I don't know. And it wasn't like different chapters were different people or anything. It didn't seem like that. It was pretty consistent tone-wise, voice-wise. But I don't know if that helped it or hindered it. China Rich Girlfriend, the second of the Crazy Rich Asians. I didn't like it either. Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. Disliked it so much I didn't finish. There was just too many issues. We already talked about the little elephant with the big earache. One little elephant. It was cute. Okay, this is the time where my dad died. Because after several days of not being able to read at all, the only thing I could handle were a couple children's books. I only read like maybe 7 things in May. That's sad. And I tried to do Shakespeare for Squirrels, but as I mentioned earlier when I talked about Fool, I can't really remember what I listened to. I was so out of it dealing with all this stuff with my dad. So, I mean, 2 children's books about elephants. Basically, I read them when I did so I could send them home with my brother so he could give them to my niece, which they're way younger than her reading level. But that's okay. She likes elephants. So that, if nothing else, she can display them for the pictures. Shakespeare for Squirrels. I know it has to do with Midsummer Night's Dream and people turning into squirrels, but I just don't know. Then we get into like late June. I finally started reading again. And I started Feed by Myra Grant. I don't know, is that the name of the series? Whatever the series is, I read that series and really got heavy into zombies. I read a lot of zombie stuff this year. Early stories of Truman Capote, short stories, classics. Truman Capote, best known probably for Breakfast at Tiffany's on the fiction side, and oh my god, I just completely blanked on the title. In Cold Blood on the nonfiction side. And these are just some random short stories that are some of his earlier works. They were fine. Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory. Somehow I ended up reading a Christmas book like end of June, early July. I don't know. Just when it happened to finally get here, I guess. But I liked it. It is an older couple, which is nice. A woman takes her mother with her when she has to go to England for a job, and her mother meets somebody who works at the palace. Her daughter's doing something like designing a dress or something for somebody in the palace, and the mother meets, he's like, I don't know if he's like a butler or somebody who's in charge of scheduling or something, but he's got an important job, and they end up falling for each other, and then she comes back to the United States and she's all, upset about having to leave him behind, and things happen. It was good. It was cute. I liked it. Meet Cute, another contemporary romance. I don't know how cute it is really, because there's some serious stuff happens in the middle. But it was good. I really enjoyed it. Pumpkin Town, a cute children's book. There's a family who farms pumpkins, and the leftover pumpkins, they have to get rid of them. And for whatever reason, they didn't, and then the pumpkins kind of took over the town. The Elegance of the Hedgehog. Set in France, I think. Woman is like an apartment manager. She meets a guy. I don't know. I don't remember a lot about it. Then I have Undead and Unfed. It's kind of a duology. I don't think they came out with a third book. They kind of wrapped everything up pretty well in the second one. Now, judging from the cover of Undead, you would think it would be something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Very, very loosely. There is a cheerleader type. A group of kids went on a ski trip, and on their way back, they stop at this diner, and everybody turns into zombies except for the handful of people that stayed on the bus. And, the first book is them surviving and trying to figure out what's going on, and then the second book gets more into how the whole thing started. I liked the first book better than the second book, but they were both good and interesting. Again, zombies. Charles Baudelaire, The Flowers of Evil. It's poetry. I hadn't read Baudelaire before, and I enjoyed it. Lady Killers. It's about female murderers. True crime. And, I do enjoy some nonfiction occasionally. Freedom Soup. Thank You, Omu. The Ugly Vegetables. And Bilal Cook's Doll are all children's picture books that have to do with cultural foods. And I enjoyed all of them. There's one I'm still trying to get a hold of, and I don't think I'm ever going to see it. I had it on request since before all the COVID stuff hit, and it still says it's in transit. It's been in transit since early March. It never got here. Banned Book Club is a graphic novel set in Korea. And it's based on a real person. It's kind of a memoir almost. A girl goes off to college and gets pulled into a group that reads banned books, and it's political stuff. Really interesting and definitely worth a read. Who Moved My Goat Cheese? That's another farm to fork mystery. Fry Bread is another one of the cultural food ones. Dumpty by John Lithgow. It's poetry, basically bashing Trump. Personally, I'm not a fan of Trump, so I didn't mind it. It was fine. It wasn't great. Whatever. Ibiza Boy, My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich, is about a young girl and moving to New York and growing up in New York and the way she's treated by the other kids. Hand on the Wall, it's the third Truly Devious book. Young adult mystery. Mailing May is about a little girl who wants to go visit her grandparents, and it's set like during the Depression era, and they can't afford it. It might be earlier than the Depression era. Whatever, it's historical. This one's a children's book, and I know there's some other books about the situation, but they can't afford to buy her a train ticket, so they mail her. Basically, they pay for postage, and they, tie a tag onto her jacket, and she rides with the postmaster on the train, and it's a workaround because she couldn't afford a full train ticket, but they could afford, however much it was to send her as freight, basically. Juneteenth, it's about Black American celebration of the ending of slavery, particularly in Texas. Come Tumbling Down, it's another one of the Wayward Children books. I already talked about African American Holidays. The Last House Guest, it's a thriller. Mother-Daughter Book Club, it's contemporary. About a mother-daughter book club. A bunch of mothers decided that they were tired of their daughters running amok, and they created this book club. And so the mothers and daughters read the same books, and they have, discussions and adventures, and it all ties stuff together, and there's a whole series of them. And I'm planning on reading more. Kirsten White, The Guinevere Deception. Wasn't my favorite, because I'm not a big fan of the Arthurian legends stuff. It's fine. This was fine. It just wasn't for me. I have read other Kirsten White books that I really liked that other people have hated. So, like, I didn't mind Slayer, which is the Buffy one. I wish there would have been more Buffy to it instead of complaining about Buffy all the way through the book and then having her show up like at the very end in a blurb. I would have liked, more of Buffy throughout the book that was less hating on her and, But anyway, that's not this book. This book is based on Arthurian legend, Guinevere in particular. It was fine. The Chain is a thriller. A woman's child is kidnapped, and to get her child back, she has to kidnap another child and basically continue the chain. Love Stargirl is the sequel to Stargirl. I didn't like it as well because you lost the dynamics between Stargirl and I can't think of the boy's name. I want to say Jacob, but I don't think that's it. Stargirl and the boy from the first book, you lose the dynamic because she's moved away. So it's her in this new location and new people, and she lost the quirkiness that she had. She wasn't the same, and it was, I don't know, I didn't enjoy it as much. You Are Not Alone, Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I didn't like it as much as Anonymous Girl or The Wife Between Us. For me, I liked Anonymous Girl, and then The Wife Between Us, and then this would be my third favorite if I was ranking them. It was fine. I like their books. I will probably keep reading their books, but I don't think this one was as good. Montauk, another historical woman is unhappy in her marriage. They're on Montauk for the summer. It's in Long Island. She ends up meeting a guy, and she knows her husband's having an affair, but she ends up meeting this guy, and they develop a relationship, and then stuff happens, and doesn't end the way you think it's going to end. Turncoat, another Dresden Files book. The Dresden Files series has been kind of ups and downs for me. When it started getting so heavy into Fae politics, I've liked it less. I love Harry. I think he's great. And I think some of the people he interacts with, other characters, are really great. But then you start dumping all this Fae politics in there, and it ruins it for me. Witches of Bourbon Street, I think it's the second book in this series. There's a whole series of Bourbon Street books. I think this is the second. Enjoyed it. Paranormal, there's witches, there's ghosts, there's, assorted paranormal critters. Stuff happens. There's some romance in there. Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, another contemporary romance. Bailey School Kids, Monsters Don't Scuba Dive. It was cute. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm not the target audience, so I didn't get as much out of it as somebody younger might. It could always be worse. It won some sort of award, looks like. I don't even know how to describe it. Basically, somebody's complaining about something, and they make a wish, and the way the wish is granted isn't what they expected, and the person that grants the wish is like, well, it could always be worse, and it gets a lot of worse before it gets better. No one is going to Nashville. A girl finds a dog. She wants to keep the dog. She wants to grow up to be a vet. Her parents say no to keeping the dog. One of them tells a story about somebody or other going to Nashville, and it ends up they get to keep the dog and nobody goes to Nashville. Going to Nashville is like getting rid of somebody, basically. They're sent away and never come back. 8 Perfect Murders. I think the concept was better than the execution. I am curious to see what the next book holds. In this one, a guy owns a bookstore and some murders are happening. Excuse me. And the investigation leads them to him because he had written some blog post somewhere along the line about 8 Perfect Murders, suggesting the books and things based on that. And stuff happens. Judy Moody. I read several Judy Moody books, 3 or 4 of them. I thought they were fun. Mystery of Pony Hollow wasn't a great mystery, but it was okay for the age group. Where the Red Fern Grows. I thought I had read it before, but I hadn't. This was something completely different than what I thought I had read. It was okay, but I'm not into little boys going hunting. So, not my thing. The Good Luck Charm, I enjoyed it. Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Oh my god, it was so freaking boring. Even the movie was boring. And how can you take a story as interesting as that of Jesse James and his eventual assassination and turn it into some of the most boring crap I've ever read or watched? And to put great actors in a movie and then make it that bad? Oh, I did not like it. How to Train Your Dragon, Book 1. Very different from the movie. Deadline. This goes with Feed, which was a little ways back. It's like book 2, I think. Basically, in this series, Newsflesh, that's the name of the series, a group of bloggers go, in the first book, they go on the campaign trail with a presidential nominee. And is after the main part of the apocalypse has happened already, and there's zombies, and they know what causes it, and they know that everybody has the zombie virus inside them, and they don't call it a zombie virus, but it's a zombie virus. And you know, something happens, you might turn, and if you turn, then, you know, it's up to whoever to put you down. Well, as you continue through the series, you find that's not necessarily so. And there's a lot of conspiracy stuff goes on. Like the CDC has stuff that they hide and they don't want to get out, and they know more than what they say, and yeah, it's interesting. Very good series. I highly recommend the series, especially if you're interested in zombies and you like science-y stuff. Mira Grant is good at putting science-y stuff into her books. I don't know if it's real science, accurate science or not, but it's interesting and it makes the books work, I think. Christmas Eve at the Mellops. Cute little story. Again, I don't know why I read it in the middle of summer. I think I read an article or something that mentioned the book. It's about a family and they want to decorate a Christmas tree, and each of the kids ends up going out and getting a tree, and they have all these trees then, but they meet all these people who are in need, and they end up, decorating the trees and gathering gifts and things and food and taking them to all the people that needed help. Another Judy Moody book. Elizabeth Peters, Legend in Green Velvet. It was okay. Woman's supposed to be going on this archaeological dig in Scotland. It was fine. True Story of the Three Little Pigs was cute. It's Three Little Pigs story told from the wolf's point of view. When Stars Are Scattered, another graphic novel. It's a standalone. It's fantastic. Highly worth reading. It says it's Victoria Jameson and Omar Muhammad. Victoria Jameson did more of the art, and Omar Muhammad is who it's about. It's about refugees and growing up in a refugee camp, and eventually he makes his way to America. And this is his story about his time in the refugee camps and, eventually making it here. Really good. The artwork's good. Definitely worth reading. Sea Witch and Part of Your World are both takes on the Ursula the Sea Witch from Little Mermaid. Are You My Mother by P.D. Eastman. A bird, its mother has gone off to find food, and the bird hatches and then is confused and gets out of the nest and asks, like every animal it finds, if it's his mother, and eventually finds his way home and his mom. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, it's an alphabet book. Rainbow Fish is about a fish who is so proud of his scales, and the other fish don't like him because, he's all about this, that, and the other, and they don't feel like they're as pretty or whatever, and then he shares his scales, and everybody's pretty, and he makes all these friends. Dangerous Alliance is a Jane Austen-esque story, romance. It was fine. Fortunately, The Milk by Neil Gaiman is a very convoluted adventure and a lot of fun. Guess How Much I Love You is about a mother and a child and telling how much they love each other. Spirit Bound is another Vampire Academy novel. Alone in the Dark is, I think, book 2 in the Cincinnati series by Karen Rose. They are romantic suspense, I guess. They're basically a romance thriller. Murders and stuff happen, and people fall in love. It's odd. Another Dresden Files book. Another Neil Gaiman book, The Day I Swapped My Dad for 2 Goldfish. I've seen stories similar to this before. This one's cute. And of course, I love Neil Gaiman, so I probably rated it high. Excuse me. But this kid has a friend who has these 2 goldfish, and so he swaps his dad to get the goldfish. And then the kid who swapped his dad for swapped the dad for something else that he wanted, and they swapped to something else, to swap to something else. So dad keeps getting swapped on down the line. And finally, mom shows up and she's like, no, 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 you get your dad back. So then they have to swap everything back until dad finally comes home. And of course, the whole time dad's oblivious. He's all about reading his newspaper and he doesn't care what's going on. One of Us is Next. It's a sequel to One of Us is Lying. It was fine. Young adult mystery. Or I don't know, thriller maybe? Young adult thriller? I would have liked more of the characters from the first book. There's a couple that were kind of tangential to what was happening. This is more like the siblings of the ones from before. Interesting, fine. Blackout and Feedback are both from the Newsflesh series. Definitely worth reading. The Crepes of Wrath is a pancake house mystery, cozy mystery. I've read several of them now, 3 or 4 of them. They're fun. They're set in Washington State, along the coast. And set in a little pancake house that's, open for breakfast and maybe lunch. And the owner gets involved in a bunch of various crimes that happen and tries to solve them. Art Matters by Neil Gaiman. It's basically an illustrated book of a speech that he gave. And being an art person myself, I really appreciated it. Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. I thought it was pretty well written. Kind of uncomfortable with the subject matter. Incest and child abuse. And it kind of glorified the incest because it made it... Let me back up a little bit. There's siblings that are... The father dies and the mother can't afford to keep them in the house they live in, so they move into her parents' house, but her dad isn't allowed to know that the kids exist, and the grandmother is just a royal pain in the ass. She's a bitch and a half. And they lock the kids in this room, and they have access to the attic. And basically, they have to keep themselves entertained and quiet because they don't want the grandfather to find out they exist. And the mother keeps saying, oh, yeah, this is going on. I'm sorry I haven't been up to see you, but this, that, and the other thing have happened. And then she ends up, I don't want to say a whole lot more, but basically the brother and sister end up falling in love and having a relationship. And yeah, it's very uncomfortable. The whole incest thing, it's weird. And there's more to it that I'm not going to talk about. If you are interested in the story, pick the book up. I thought it was written well. It's just the subject matter is cringy. And it's weird that I could accept this and I couldn't handle Lolita. Lolita was terrible. But this I tolerated.
I guess because I could understand where it was coming from more than the other one. Elton John, his autobiography, Me. He's a very interesting person. And I learned a lot about him. Stuff I hadn't heard before. Some things I had heard before. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. I was supposed to read this in high school, and I didn't. Shame on me. So I finally did, and very interesting. It's historical. It's nonfiction. It's about um, American history, the American West, and Native Americans, and how terribly they were treated. Whiskey in a Teacup. It's kind of a memoir by Reese Witherspoon. And there's some recipe stuff in there. There's some homemaking tips in there. There's some life stuff in there. A lot of pictures. It was interesting. Fox by Nene Brandis. She's the one that did Romanov that we read earlier in the year. This one is about Guy Fawkes, and in this case, his son, and how Guy Fawkes is trying to get his son to follow in his footsteps and participate in the plot and all that. And things and stuff happen, the usual. Doesn't go quite the way they think. Buddha Boy was interesting. It had to do with bullying and art and self-expression. Haunted Japan, Japanese ghost stories, basically. Murder in the Movies, a nonfiction book where the author talks about various movies and how murder is in the plot and how some of them are tied to real murders and how some real murders are depicted in plots. And it was interesting. It's something I like. Obviously I read true crime and I like to watch movies and I like thrillers. So it kind of ties all that stuff together. And it's about how murder is depicted in movies, basically. James Patterson, The Midwife Murders. I had it figured out by page 50. So I read the, rest of the book, the next 250 pages, just to find out how I was right. I knew who the love interest was going to be. I knew who the killer was going to be. And basically, in the following 250 pages, I had to find out why I was right. A Cosmology of Monsters. This was another strange book. I read a lot of strange stuff this year. This is a boy who can see monsters. His family does a haunted house every year. There's I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so bizarre. There's a monster who the boy kind of falls in love with, I guess. And then stuff starts happening to his family, and it has to do with this monster that he likes, and he has to do things to get the monster to let go of his family, and it was convoluted. Boners. The title is not at all what it sounds like. Basically, and I've seen a lot of these little things pop up on like Facebook and stuff. It's a bunch of little sayings and things that kids say or come up with, little factoids and stuff that are inaccurate. Seriously misguided facts according to school kids. And it was collected by Alexander Abingdon and illustrated by Dr. Seuss. This is the beginning of the Dr. Seussness of the year. We have hit September. There's The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the prequel to The Hunger Games. I guess it was fine. I didn't need a book about President Snow. I don't think it enhanced the series any. It just, I didn't find it necessary. I think it was a money grab. Dracula Marries Frankenstein. It was a graphic novel, sort of. I think they called it a blended novel because it's part graphic novel and part regular novel. And this kid wants, or these kids want to make a movie, and they want to make a horror movie, and there's a woman who has a house that's perfect. It's like looks like an old castle, and she's got secrets, and they discover the secrets, and uh, it's a convoluted story. Um, and of course, it talks about same-sex marriage because of Dracula and Frankenstein. Last Sacrifice is another Vampire Academy novel. Then we have Dr. Seuss's ABC, which was cute. I had trouble in getting to Sala Salou, which was cute. Oh, The Things You Can Think, which was cute. Fox and Socks was cute. Green Eggs and Ham is a classic. Horton Hatches the Egg and Horton Hatches the Who. Or Horton Hears the Who. He hatches the egg, he hears the Who. Cat in the Hat, classics. Great Gatsby, classic. It was fine. Jake Ransom and the Skull King's Shadow. It was a fun adventure. Takes place in Mexico mostly, in the pyramids. Jim Butcher, Skin Game, another of the Dresden Files books. Macbeth graphic novel. It was okay. Not great, not crap. Some more Dr. Seuss. What Pet Should I Get? Daisy Head Maisie. The Cat in the Hat Comes Back. Oh, The Places You'll Go. Why am I going backwards? If I Ran the Zoo. On Beyond Zebra. One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. The Butter Battle Book. The Dr. Seuss's Horse Museum. Now, this one is one of the most recent ones. It was a bunch of stuff that they found after he had passed. And basically, it's a trip through art history based on pictures of horses. Really interesting. Of course, I'm an art person. I do have an art degree, so that one appealed to me on a very high level. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. Of course, you know, the Grinch. He's my hero. I love the Grinch. I love the Grinch. I love the Grinch. Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? Another Dr. Seuss book. It was fine. Nicholas Sparks, The Notebook was a reread, and then The Wedding I hadn't read before. The Notebook I gave 5 stars the first time I read it. I don't remember if I did 4 or 5 stars the second time. It makes me cry at the end every time. And being that my dad died from dementia, it kind of hit me really hard this time through with the woman having Alzheimer's, which, sorry, that's a spoiler. But, yeah, that one really hit me hard this year. Probably shouldn't have read it so soon. Breaking Cat News is cute. It's a comic strip, I guess. And basically this book is a bunch of the comics collected together. Louis Anderson's Hey Mom. His mother died when he was fairly young, I think. And he writes letters to his mom talking about, you know, how things are going, his life, what's going on. Stuff that he would share with her if she was still alive. I thought it was a pretty good memoir. Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered. The definitive how-to guide. Wasn't what I was expecting. Uh, some more Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss's Sleep Book and You're Only Old Once. Zombies. Zombies is, I don't know if it's a graphic novel necessarily. It's kind of, I guess, more of a blended novel like the Dracula and Frankenstein one. Only this one's for adults and not kids. Um, it's kind of a diary, a record of a year of infection. So basically, it's like a diary, and the guy is, you know, writing what he's experiencing and what he's seeing and what he's finding out about this zombie outbreak. Really good artwork. Um, Alice 19th, books 1 and 2. It's a manga. Um, I don't know how to explain what's going on. I have books 3 through 7 sitting here that I just got out of the library because I thought, hey, let's finish off the series. I'm guessing there's only 7 books. It's all the library had anyway. Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. There's a farmer in Kenya, I think. And it talks about um like trade, the people who want to trade with his family and they want to cheat him, and then he ends up, there's, I think, a murder happens somewhere along the line. He ends up someplace else, like with another tribe or something, and I can't really explain it because I'm not entirely sure I understood all of it. Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I really liked it, and I'm anxious to read the next book. A girl is, for one of her classes, has to do a project, like a capstone project, and she's going to solve this murder that happened a few years before. Because she doesn't believe that the person they said did it had anything to do with it. And so she's going to set out to see if she can prove that. A Bad Day for Sunshine. If you liked the Charlie Davidson series that she wrote, starts with One Foot in the Grave, you might enjoy this. It's a little different. It's Sunshine is a cop. She's been elected sheriff, whether she wanted to be even on the ballot or not. Her parents put her on the ballot, and she got elected. So she and her daughter go back to this New Mexico town where she grew up, and her daughter gets involved in some stuff, and there's some other stuff that happens, and there's a murder, and of course, because do I read books without murder? Not very often. So basically, it's solving the mystery. This Frankenstein graphic novel isn't worth the paper it's printed on. It was not good. It barely covered the basics. It was written on like a second grade level, barely covered what the book happens in the book. Basically, it's a guy creates a monster, the monster gets loose. Yeah, there's so much more to it that if you were thinking of using it as a supplemental material for teaching the Frankenstein novel, don't waste your breath. There was nothing redeeming about this particular graphic novel. There are other graphic novel versions, which I'm sure are much better. This one was not good. The Mutineer, A Romance of Pitcairn Island. Basically, it's the Mutiny on the Bounty told from Fletcher Christian's point of view. And look, more Dr. Seuss. Hop on Pop, Scrambled Egg Super, Hunches and Bunches, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street. I am not going to get up today. There's a Wocket in my pocket. Mr. Brown can moo, can you? If I ran the circus. The King's Stilts, The Sneetches and Other Stories. Lots of classics in there, lots not quite so classic. Mr. Brown can moo, can you? If you remember the Police Academy movies, and there is the guy who did all the sound effects. You need this dude to make an audio of this book, because it's all about the sound effects. And if that guy would do it, yeah. Michael somebody, I think. I don't remember. Killer Green Tomatoes. It's another farm to fork mystery. Oh, look, more Dr. Seuss. Horton and the Quagger Bug and more lost stories. The Lorax, Yertle the Turtle. Yertle the Turtle is about Hitler. I Killed Zoe Spanos. It's another murder thriller young adult book. This one has a podcast element, and I really enjoyed this one. So maybe, for the podcast element to work for me, it needs to be tied into a murder. Imprudence is the second book of the Custard Protocol, so kind of steampunkish. And of course, I didn't find out until this book that this actually comes after her other series, The Parasol Protectorate. So, now I'm going to have to go back when I finish this series and read the other series. I think I have 2 more in this series to go. The Darwin Affair is a historical mystery. Actually. The definitive 100% objective guide to modern cinema. Not exactly. Basically, it's a bunch of random essays where she describes the plot of movies and dumps on them. Bed, Bats, and Beyond, really super cute little kid's story about a bat who can't fall asleep, and his sibling bats try to tell him stories, and those stories keep him awake instead of making him fall asleep. It was cute. Joanne Fluke, Christmas Cupcake Murder. This is another one where it's kind of out of sequence. But it's okay. It was still good. It's a good story. Still love the characters. Dancing at the Pity Party. This one hit me hard. Really hard. The author, Tyler, she goes to college, and while she's at school, her mother finds out she's got cancer. So the daughter, while she's home on break, sees how bad things have gotten, and her mother's getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And this is her memoir of the time when her mom, basically from diagnosis to death, and how, she handled it, her reactions to her mother's illness. I read it too close to my dad dying. My dad had dementia. It wasn't cancer, it was dementia. So there are parallels. That's all I'm going to say. I can't talk about this book. Definitely worth reading. But be careful, because if you've had a recent death in your family, especially of a parent, it's going to get you. It's going to get you. I can't even talk about it. Definitely, probably the best graphic novel I read all year. Obviously, if it's making me cry just talking about it. Yeah, it's definitely one of my top books of the year. And then we have Where Dreams Descend, which I was very disappointed in. It was a good story. It was a fine book. But all the hype about it was it's Phantom of the Opera meets Moulin Rouge. Bullshit. I'm going to call it out right now. Bull fucking shit. I did not see Phantom in there at all. Phantom of the Opera is my all-time number one favorite novel of all time. Okay? So I did not see that in this book. You know what's Phantom of the Opera about it? There's a picture of a chandelier on the cover. Takes more than a chandelier to be Phantom of the Opera inspired. So just putting it out there. If you're saying it's like Phantom of the Opera, you're fucking wrong. Okay. Una Out of Order. This one was very weird. Another very frickin' weird book. I've read a lot of weird books this year. Or 2020. Una Out of Order is about a woman named Una, which in itself is an unusual name. I don't know that there are very many out there. I believe, was it Charlie Chaplin's wife was named Una? I think that's the only time I've ever heard of anybody named that. Anyway, something happens and she starts living her life out of order. So, like, on her birthday, she doesn't know what age she's going to wake up as. It's weird. And so she's, like, finding out these parts of her life, but randomly. And it was very strange. Really good book. I really loved it. But it jumped around in the timeline so much, and I was getting confused at points. But then so is Una. She's like, I don't even know what year I am now. I don't know what age I'm supposed to be. I don't know who I am at this point in time because I know that this stuff's going to happen and I know this stuff's already happened. But, you know, here we are living a year that I don't have any recollection of because it either hasn't happened yet or it's already happened. It was weird. We need to talk about Kevin. Weird? Yes. I don't know how to classify this one. Great. Now my nose is going to run because I started crying. This woman got married and had a child she didn't want. And basically, as the child grew up, she's always negative toward him. He had some developmental delays, like he wouldn't speak, he wouldn't learn to use the toilet, things like that. And she would just, you know, in that happy mother baby talk kind of voice, talk down to him about how much she hated him and she didn't want him to begin with and all that. And then is surprised when he goes and kills a bunch of classmates, a la Columbine. Very strange. Although he used like a bow and arrow instead of a gun. There is a twist, which I didn't see it coming. Really a difficult book because, you know, you want to blame the mom, but she made bad choices. She's the one that chose to get married when she did. And she's the one who chose to get pregnant when she did. So she chose to get pregnant and have this child. But then when it came down to actually being a mother, she didn't want to be a mother. So basically, it felt to me like she was blaming the child for her bad decisions. And it brings up a whole conversation of nature versus nurture. Would he have still done some of the things that he did if he would have grown up in a different environment? Interesting idea. Stephen King, The Dark Half. Stephen King's kind of hit or miss for me. This one was all right. It's about an author, as a lot of his books are. It was fine. Dread Nation. Guess what? Zombies! More zombies! This one was interesting because instead of being a slave, this girl was brought up to kill zombies. That's what her training was. And then she's shipped out to Kansas and ends up dealing with zombies, but not for the reason that she thought. She was sent out there not for the reason she thought. Okay, so here we have another graphic novel called Violent Cases. It's written by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Dave McKean, who does a lot of his illustrations. Violent Cases is a play on the word violin cases. Has to do with like a mafia guy, and a Nazi doctor. It's unusual. Kingdom of Back. I thought this one was pretty good. I think I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't, I don't know, there was something about it that just didn't quite work for me, but I thought it was a good story. It's about Mozart and his sister. And I guess as children, it had this fantasy world called Back. And in this book, the sister gets involved with this guy who's from the Kingdom of Back. And it was definitely interesting. There was something about it that it kept me from rating it higher. And I can't remember what it was offhand, but for the most part, it's really a good story. It came in one of my book boxes, probably an Owl Crate, because that's the one I was most consistent to get. For Whom the Bread Rolls, it's a Pancake House mystery. Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. I liked Wilder Girls better. This one was bizarre. And I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about a couple of the elements. Because I'm not entirely sure I understood them completely. Night of Many Dreams. A girl from China ends up in San Francisco, I think, pursuing her college and career and what have you. Meanwhile, her sister is stayed in China and is pursuing her career, and stuff happens. Prince and the Dressmaker, I really liked. It's about a prince who likes to wear dresses and, is trying to keep it secret, and, he gets his dressmaker to design him outfits. There's nothing wrong with a guy wanting to wear a dress. My son likes to wear the dress occasionally on his girl days. He says he's gender fluid, so that's fine. Recently, there's been the whole big controversy about Harry Styles from One Direction being photographed in dresses. Hey, if that's what makes him happy, let him wear it. Why does it bother everybody so much? Why does everybody think they need to control everybody else? If he's happy wearing a dress, let him wear a dress. It's not hurting you. Okay, enough of that. Hungry Tales by Jonathan Mabry. Guess what? More zombies. Because it was apparently the year of the zombie for me. There's, I think, 5 short stories, novellas, based on zombies, and I kind of feel like these went with something else that I didn't read. But it's fine. The stories kind of stand on their own. You don't have to read anything else to enjoy them. Merchant of Venice, good old Shakespeare. Another of the Anna Green Gables books, Rilla of Ingleside. Again, I'm still not a big fan of Anne of Green Gables, although there was less Anne in this book, more of her daughter, so I kind of like that better. I think I rated it higher than some of the previous books. Mooncakes. I liked it. It was a cute graphic novel. There's a witch and there's a werewolf and they're friends, possibly more than friends. And they have to fight this evil. We sold our souls. This is the beginning of my Grady Hendrix experience. We sold our souls is about. It's basically a Faust story. This band signs this record deal, and they became a huge band. And when members of the band didn't want to do it anymore, then the concerts became like harvesting grounds for souls, and it was odd. Actually, my least favorite of all the Grady Hendrix that I read this year. Bentley Little, The Influence. I read 2 books by this guy this year. Did not like this one. That's all I'm going to say about it. Just did not like it. Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is basically a memoir in poetry. Really good. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I read it for Newbery November. You'll start seeing some more Newbery stuff popping up here in a moment. Anna Dressed in Blood. Oh my God, I loved this book. I have the second one sitting here in my library pile. Oh wow. There's a guy, he's a ghost hunter, and he finds this ghost Anna who's been killing people, and he finds out, how she died and why she's a ghost and why she can't leave that house, and a lot of stuff. Kind of falls in love with her, and book 2 kind of continues on with that aspect of it. A Snicker of Magic, really cute. The mother is a witch, but she hides it. She doesn't want to have anything to do with magic. They end up in this town that used to be magical, but the magic has gone away. Because the founding brothers had a feud, and when they left the town, the magic went away. And it's about finding the magic in the town again. Dark Emperor and Other Poems of the Night. Fine for children. The artwork is extremely good. Beautiful stuff. The poetry, less so. But it's fine for children. It was a Newbery book, I think. It looks like it's got the little emblem on there. Murder by Sarah Pinborough. Did not realize until I was like halfway through that this was part 2 of a series. I don't know if I'm going to go back and pick up the other one. I was expecting this to be, and I don't know why I had this in my head, I was expecting it to be basically a Jack the Ripper story, and it really wasn't. It mentioned a guy who tried to solve that case, but The Great Gilly Hopkins. I had seen the movie of this and didn't realize it until I watched the movie after reading the book. I'm like, oh, I've already seen this. It's about a girl named Gilly Hopkins who has been passed from foster home to foster home, and she ends up in this foster home, and she's kind of a complete brat and a half, being really disruptive and everything. She's hateful to her teachers and stuff. And they finally get through to her, and she decides she wants to stay there, and finally has a family. And then her mother's mother tracks her down. And the whole time she's wanting to go back to her mom because, she knows that her mom really loves her, blah, 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 blah. And then when her grandmother comes to get her, she doesn't want to leave because she's found this family that she wants to stay where she is. And they're like, but it doesn't work that way. So she ends up going with her grandmother. And she has some things to learn. The Surrender Tree is poems about Cuba's struggle for independence, basically. Their struggle for freedom. Really liked it. Now there's like an English only version, and then there's a version that's got the English poem and the Spanish poem. This picture, you can see it's got both the English and the Spanish in it. It was a Newbery book. Definitely worth a read. Honk the Moose. This was cute. These boys have been out like hunting or something, and they come home and they find a moose in the stable. The one boy's father basically rents horses, stables horses. And they find this moose, and he's in the stable, and he's eating all the hay, and they try to explain to the parents that there's this moose, and they won't believe them until the next morning when they go, and they find the moose asleep. And, everybody's afraid of the moose. And the moose is just like, hey, I just want to eat. They tried to lead the moose away, but he comes back. And then in the spring, he wanders off. And then the next winter, he comes back. So, yeah, they end up naming him Honk because he makes a kind of a honking noise. I guess that's what moose do. I don't know. The 10th Girl. This is set in a boarding school in Argentina. It's cold, it's dreary, it's gray, it's just miserable. And there's ghosts, and there's twists that I can't go into. I still am not sure how I feel about the twist. My Best Friend's Exorcism. Here's another of the Grady Hendrix books. I think I read 4 total. This one was interesting. I liked all the 80s references because it's set in the 80s. Basically, one of the girls in their little group ends up possessed and does horrible things to people. Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is the most recent Grady Hendrix book. And it's about vampires. There's a book group, and basically all the women have different issues and what have you. But the one woman is convinced that the man who has moved into her neighbor's house is a vampire and sets out to prove it. There's a scene with rats that just completely freaked me out because it was getting colder, and we have like wooded area behind our house, and in the wintertime the mice come in, and the mice were starting to come in, and there was this whole scene with these rats, and it was horrific and terrifying, and I saw mice in the house when this was going on, and I'm just like freaking out. Can't get rid of the damn mice. Or the FMs, as I call them. FM as in fucking mice. Anyway, so if you ever hear me say FM, that's probably what it's about. Mexican Gothic. It's Gothic. It's set in Mexico. A girl goes to her cousin who is like having issues with her husband, and there's ghosts and things, and there's some really weird shit goes on in this book. Really weird. Don't know how to explain it, and if I tried to explain it, it'd probably be a big spoiler, so we'll just stop there. But definitely on the weird meter. Jacob Have I Loved, another Newbery book. Jacob Have I Loved comes from a Bible verse. It was okay. I didn't connect with the characters in this one, but it was okay. All the Stars and Teeth. There's a mermaid. There's pirates. There's a princess who can't control her magic. Ragtag band of misfits. Neil Gaiman Library, Volume 1. It's got 4 of his novellas in graphic novel form. I think I have read at least 3 of them in their original prose form, novella form. So seeing them here illustrated was kind of cool. The other one I wasn't familiar with, but it's Neil Gaiman. So obviously there's some weirdness there. Horror Store, set in Cleveland, which is about 3 hours from here. It's the opposite end of the state. It's the north. I'm in the south. Anyway, it's set in an IKEA style furniture store. Weird things have been happening. So a group of employees are supposed to spend the night and try to figure out what's going on. Weirdness ensues. Janet Ivanovich, Fortune and Glory. It's the number 27. Tantalizing 27. Why they didn't call it Tantalizing 27, I don't know. I don't know why they switched title formats for this book. Still driving me nuts. And I know I've already talked about that one. It's more of the grandma story. A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. Another weird one. And it's got ghosts. And I'm not entirely sure about the ending. Something about the ending makes me question it. Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech is another Newbery book. A girl who's like part Native American. Again, part of it takes place in Ohio. Moves with her dad to this town, and she wants to go out west to find her mother, and she goes with her grandparents to go try to find her mother. And there's some stuff that I can't talk about because it'll ruin the book. Behind Her Eyes. Oh my god, the fucking twist. Did not see it coming. It was, shall I use my favorite word? Weird. Very weird. I don't even know how to talk about that book. It was so weird. Granny's Got a Gun. It's a cozy. I have the second one actually downloaded right now to listen to. Granny happens to be a retired CIA agent. And while she's at a book club meeting, one of the people drops dead. And she's not convinced it was a heart attack, like everybody says, so she investigates. Rolling in the Deep is a novella that goes with, the one that we looked at earlier, about the mermaid siren things, sea creatures that kill people. This one is like the prequel novella. The Killer's Shadow. The FBI's hunt for a white supremacist serial killer. I've read John Douglas books before and really, really liked them. This one was okay, but I felt like he spent too much time talking about other cases and how something they did with this case, they did with this other case first, and then he'd spend all this time talking about this other case, and then finally come back to the point. So it felt a little scattered to me. Not as good as some of his other books. Hattie Big Sky is about a girl out in Montana. Oh, she gets moved from, I think, Maryland out to Montana to basically build up her uncle's homestead. Her uncle has died, left everything to her, and she has to build up the homestead, put in so much fencing, have so much crops, all these things to be able to keep the land. And it's about her struggles and how, basically she knows nothing about farming whatsoever, and she's out there having to learn how to farm, and, people she's met, there's a lot of racism going on because her neighbor is German, and this is taking place around World War I, and there's a lot of anti-German sentiment. So there's, this whole anti-German racist thing going on. There's somebody who wants her land and is doing everything he can to either get her to marry him or to sell him the land. Just a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot in that book. It's one of the Newberries. Another Newberry, My Brother Sam is Dead, takes place during the American Revolution. This boy is torn between his father and his brother. He loves them both, but he's having trouble with the fact that his brother Sam wants to join basically the American militia, and his father is a loyalist to the British Army, and so he's kind of caught in between. The Snow Hunters. This one was interesting. A boy from Korea ends up in Brazil and apprentices to a tailor, and it talks about how they don't know how to communicate. They can't speak to each other because they don't speak the same language. How they learn to communicate with each other. He meets this girl. Again, he doesn't know how to communicate with her, but he develops this relationship with this girl and her brother, and interesting and fairly short, really. Definitely worth a read. I thought it was really good. Let's see. Here's the second Bentley Little book, The Haunted. This one was so much better than The Influence. So much better. This one, it's a haunted house. There's ghosts. There's murders. There's, trying to deal with family issues, some that arise because of the move, and some that might have already been there that weren't discussed, and a lot of stuff going on in this book. This one was so much better than The Influence. The Influence, don't bother. It's not worth the paper it's written on. This one's good. House of the Seven Gables. It's classic, kind of gothic, American Gothic. Peace Talks by Jim Butcher. It's book 16, I think, in the Dresden Files series. There's one that comes after it, Battleground, which I haven't read yet. I'm still waiting on it to come from the library. Or actually for it to come on Overdrive. There's I'm 117 or something in line, so it'll be a while. This one, very heavy on the Fae politics, so this one was not one of my favorites in the series. And all this stuff is happening, and it just kind of ends. I'm guessing that it picks up where it left off in the next book. I hope so, because it just kind of just stopped. And I didn't like that. Miss Davenport's Christmas. That makes it sound like it's only one Miss Davenport. There are two Miss Davenports. They are sisters. And they are sent off to stay with, I don't know if it was an aunt and uncle. I think it was an aunt and uncle. They're sent off to stay with this family over Christmas, but they're not supposed to celebrate Christmas, and they're not supposed to go to any parties, and this, that, and the other. No fancy clothes, no fancy anything. We don't celebrate the holidays because their parents are strict Puritans. And, yeah, that didn't work. Because the aunt and uncle are like, okay, so now you're under our roof. Here's how things are going to be. Look, you're getting some new clothes. Oh, look, there's these, rich guys that want to come and meet you and date you. And, we're putting up a Christmas tree. We're having a big feast for Christmas. We're going to a ball. We're doing all these things. Your parents said no, 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 no. And then the parents find out all this stuff's happening, and they come to take the daughters home. And that's as far as I'm going to tell you. It was a pretty fun book. Oh, James Patterson, Murder Thy Neighbor. This was a true crime thriller. Take the word thriller with a grain of salt. It's a true crime book. There's 2 stories in here. First story is about a woman who owns a half of a house, like a double. We call them doubles here in Ohio. I think they're called other things, other places. But basically, she owns half of a double, and the other side is falling into disrepair, and somebody finally buys it and is going to fix it up. And she's all happy that this guy's here to fix up his house. And he's all friendly, and, they get along really well, and he joins the neighborhood group and falls behind on repairing his house, and garbage starts collecting in the yard, and rats, and he's struggling, and he can't make the repairs, and she's trying to help him, and she's like, you need to take care of your roof because it has started leaking and is damaging my side of the house. So we need to get this taken care of. And he blows her off. And one thing leads to another. A neighbor comes and knocks on her door, and she doesn't answer. And they happen to have a key, so they go in and they find it looks like a scene of a struggle. And come to find out, the neighbor has murdered her. The other story was, and this is weird because I read this and then I saw a video pop up on YouTube about the same case. The Facebook murders. Basically, there was this girl who was in an overprotective home. Her parents didn't let her go out or anything. She had pretty much no friends except for who she knew on social media. And she went to the pharmacy to pick up medication, and surprisingly, her parents let her walk into the store by herself. They're so overprotective. But she meets this girl, and they become friends, and they go out a couple times to do different things, and she falls in love with the girl's cousin. She thinks she's in love with the girl's brother. He's not interested in her. He's interested in somebody else. So he hooks her up with the cousin, who's madly in love with her. And she finds out that the brother has this other girlfriend and starts posting all this crap on the local messaging board and on Facebook and is just harassing them to no end, stalking basically, and finds out that the brother's girlfriend is pregnant and they're moving in together, and she just goes completely off the walls. There's all these emails from this supposed CIA agent tracking this case, and which doesn't make any sense. Why would the CIA be investigating anything domestic? That's not their job. And certainly not a little podunk town like this where it's just a girl harassing people on internet, right? Eventually, she has basically gaslighted her whole family and her boyfriend, who happens to be the cousin. Um, and she gets her dad and her cousin, and she gets her dad and her boyfriend to go and kill the brother and his girlfriend. And and the baby's already there now, by this point. And so these people were stopping by the house. The guy was going to pick up his mail or something, and he went in the house to get it and discovered the dead bodies and the crying baby, and goes out and is like, we got to call the police. And they check to make sure, if there's any breathing, if they could maybe do something to help the people. And of course they couldn't because they were dead. Their heads were blown off, basically. And they take care of the baby. The whole case gets blown wide open, and it was just, the girl was convinced that she was, I guess, this beautiful God's gift to creation. She was very deluded. Because nobody ever said any of these things to her. Things that she claimed were said but never said. And she was making up accounts and posting as other people and making these other people say how wonderful she was. And it's like, stuck on yourself much, lady? It is weird because then like a day or two later, there's a video popped up on the exact case. And I had never heard of it. Weird. Coming to Rosemont, I guess you would put that under contemporary, possibly romance. There's a little bit of a romance starting. A woman finds out that her husband, who just passed, had been cheating on her and had this whole house and everything that she didn't know about. And I guess he was going to leave, or he was creating this house for her, supposedly. At least that's what he said in the will. And anyway, she goes and ends up moving into this house. Sounded like a really beautiful place. And gets involved in the town, and they create the town has had somebody embezzling money from the retirement fund. And so she comes up with the idea of having this Easter event, and as a fundraiser, and this happens, and they end up catching the people that were involved, and I don't know, there's a bunch of crazy stuff happens. An awful lot happens in a very short novel. Okay, Of Spice and Men is another of the Pancake House ones. Graveyard Book graphic novel. This is the single volume edition. I guess it was printed in 2 volumes originally. This is the single volume edition. Excellent. There's several different artists, like each chapter is a different artist, but somehow all their different styles kind of work together. It's about a boy whose family is murdered, because, of course. And I mean, he's only like 2 years old when all this happens. and he escapes the house and ends up in the graveyard, and the ghosts of the graveyard take him in and raise him. And there's also a vampire that lives there that, keeps an eye on him. And his friend, who happens to be a werewolf, she comes and teaches him. And so he grows up his whole life in this graveyard. And it talks about the various things that happen. And this guy who killed his family is still trying to get him because I guess there's some prophecy or something. Anyway, really good. I read the actual novel when it first came out, and geez, what year was that? 2010? 2019? Or no, 2009? 2010? Or God, why do I keep saying that? 2009, I think. So it's the year that the Sigma Tau Delta conference was in Minneapolis, and he was the keynote speaker. And let me tell you, Neil Gaiman, and I know I've mentioned this in other videos, he's a really super nice guy. He started signing books and things at like 9 o'clock in the evening, and it was after midnight before I got up to the table, and he was still going. People were behind me yet. So, yeah. And he would sign anything you wanted. He would talk to you for a few minutes. Really a nice guy. Kind of shy, I think. He seemed uncomfortable being in front of the crowd a little bit. A little nervous, maybe. I think he's just shy. But definitely somebody to meet if you get the chance. I really thought it was pretty cool. And of course, he didn't just scribble his name like a lot of them do. He drew a picture and everything. He drew a tombstone in my book. So that was pretty cool. Willa Cather, Oh Pioneers. I don't remember the state it was set in. But it's set out west, and again, it's, people trying to make it on their farm. And in this case, the female of the family comes up with all the ideas and makes all the stuff work. And then the brothers are like, well, we want to sell because blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, I put all the work and stuff into this. You're not selling it. This is my home. I'm not leaving. You can't sell it out from under me. And so there's a bunch of stuff happens. I think there's a murder in there too. The Kidnapped Christmas Bride. Guy gets out of jail, finds out his ex-wife, I don't know if they were actually ever married. His baby mama is marrying some guy, and he gets there just in time to stop the wedding, and he takes the bride back to a cabin that his family has, and his son as well. And they live as a family over Christmas, and she sees the error of her ways and goes back to him. Yeah, whatever. It was pretty good. I mean, it's a romance. It was fine. Joanne Fluke, Dead Giveaway. Joanne Fluke is the one that does the Hannah Swenson books, which I've already mentioned a couple of them. This is from before she did that series. In this one, there's like an apartment complex in Nevada, like Las Vegas area, and they find parts of a dead body in the swimming pool when it has to be repaired or something. I don't remember. It's a thriller. It was fine. Yarn to Go. This one is like, it's a cozy mystery, and the girl's aunt died and used to have a yarn shop and had set up this yarn retreat where people were going to come and knit and things. and she ends up having to run the retreat, even though she has no idea about yarn or knitting or any of that. But luckily, she's got people who do know that stuff coming in to teach and what have you. And the whole time, the hotel manager is trying to get her to give up the retreat and sign it off to him so that he can run them from then on. And, people want to know what she's going to do with the yarn shop and all this stuff. And of course, somebody dies and she solves the mystery. The Magic Finger, hated it. Absolutely hated it. I had some real issues with stuff that happened in that book. Not going to talk about it because it just irritates me to no end. There Will Come a Darkness. It's a fantasy. It was fine. It wasn't for me. I think other people would really enjoy it more than I did. The 12 Slaves of Christmas and 'Twas the Knife Before Christmas are Christmas Tree Farm mysteries, book 1 and 2. And I'm really hoping she comes out with some more because I really liked these. I enjoyed the characters. I loved the setting being a Christmas tree farm and that they took place over Christmas. The events that the farm held just sounded like so much fun. I enjoyed these books quite a bit. Highly recommend. And she's got some other series under other names. So Jacqueline Frost is a whole bunch of other people as well. I don't know how she keeps it all straight being different people. But definitely good stories, good mysteries. I enjoyed them a lot. Solway by Lupita Nyong'o. Now, you may know Lupita Nyong'o as an actress. She won, the Oscar for 12 Years a Slave? She's a darker-skinned black woman. Absolutely gorgeous. And this book talks about being a dark-skinned woman or person. In this case, it's a little girl named Solway, and she doesn't understand why people don't like her, and discovers it's because of her dark skin, or believes that's why, because all the lighter-skinned black kids are all friends, and they have fun and they play together, and they all kind of band against her. And it's about colorism, which I'd never heard the term until I saw Bookish Realm talk about it on one of her videos, and she mentioned this book, and she was talking about colorism, and I never thought about it. I was familiar with the concept because, I've read other things that it kind of was mentioned in. The genocide in Rwanda was basically about that. Your skin's dark, so you're the wrong tribe, therefore you have to die. No, that's not how it works. It's okay that their skin's a different shade. But this is about a little girl who's upset because her skin is darker than the other kids, and she doesn't have any friends, and she thinks she's this horrible person, and she's ugly, and she does everything she can think of to try to lighten her skin. Her mother finds out that she's upset and explains to her why she's special, and that if the world only had light and no dark, then the world wouldn't survive, and explain, sun and moon and day and night and things like that, which brought it all into perspective. And, the little girl finally understood that, hey, she's special too. And then, there's a little bit at the end where Lupita Nyong'o talks about her experience being darker skinned and, being basically ignored because of it or being abused because of it. And personally, I think she's so beautiful. She's a gorgeous woman. And I'm trying to think, other actresses, when they cast Black actors and actresses, they do tend to go with a medium to lighter skin tone. But there are a few who have really broken out, and they're just beautiful people, and they're great actors. Lupita Nyong'o is one. Denai Guerrera, I hope I'm saying her last name right, that plays Michonne in The Walking Dead. She's beautiful. Viola Davis, she's darker skinned and beautiful. So I don't understand why people have gotten it into their heads that you can only be beautiful if you've got lighter skin. That doesn't make any sense. Because just look at the world. There are plenty of people with darker skin that are beautiful people. And beauty is more than just skin anyway. So this book, I think, is very important, especially if you know children who are experiencing this kind of thing. I think it's important for children of all skin tones to read and understand, hey, everybody is special. Skin color doesn't make a difference. It doesn't mean anything really. But especially children who are struggling with the colorism, the being marginalized because their skin is a little bit darker. Who chose what skin tone is the proper skin tone anyway? If we weren't supposed to be a rainbow of skin tones, then there wouldn't be a rainbow of skin tones. We would all look alike. There wouldn't be variety. Because there is variety, then that means that those skin tones are beautiful too. Doesn't matter what skin tone it is. Why is it that... Now this one gets me. Why is it that so many white people want to tan, want to make their skin darker, and yet there's a whole section of the population, the white population, who discriminates against people who are black or brown or red, or any other skin tone that's not white. I'm going to say white with quotes because, I'm considered white, but I'm really more pink. I'm not like white. If you want white, this tissue is white. Okay? Am I the same color as that? No, I am not. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? Okay. So, The Plague of Doves by Louise Erdrich. I have trouble saying her name. I'm sorry. I have a lot of trouble saying her name. She's like Native American and German and French, and she's got a whole bunch of stuff. But she's part of the... Oh, which tribe was it? I don't remember which tribe it is, but she is part of a tribe, and she writes books about Native American experiences. And this one has a couple different stories going on. Set in like North Dakota, and there's some like interweaving stories, and it's really interesting, and it's historical. And if you're interested in Native American historical fiction, she's one to read. She's really good. I've read a couple of her books now. Okay, Jenny Colgan, who did the books at the beginning of the list. She did like 3 of them. God, brain fart. What the heck were those books called?
Beach Cafe or whatever it was. Yeah, I have them all written down. Little Beach Street Bakery. She's the same author that did those books. Has Meet Me at the Cupcake Cafe, and then there's Christmas at the Cupcake Cafe, which I haven't read yet. A woman loses her job. Her boyfriend is being a pain in the ass. Thinks she's stupid for wanting to open her own business. She opens it, makes it a success. He tries to come in and buy out the building to force her out of business, basically, because he's an asshole. There's some romance elements in here. It's a contemporary all the way through. I mean, just the whole, she lost her job and created a business from scratch. That was an interesting enough story. And then you add in, the people she works with and the romance elements. It's really pretty good. I really enjoy Jenny Colgan's writing. And I look forward to reading more of it. She's got a ton of books out. And then there's All I Want for Christmas is a Cowboy, which is 3 novellas in one, and they all have to do with cowboys and Christmas time. And then there's Christmas at Twilight, which is a Twilight, Texas novel, but it's also kind of a romantic suspense. There's some thriller elements in there, and it was pretty good. Summer Island by Kristen Hanna. She also wrote Winter Garden and Firefly Lane, which I have on my shelf of library books. She wrote The Great Alone. She wrote The Nightingale. This, I would say, it probably falls under women's fiction. It's about a mother and her daughters and how their relationship basically imploded and the rebuilding of it. Vampire Knitting Club, another cozy mystery about a girl who goes to England to visit her grandmother and is told her grandmother died and that she inherited the knitting shop that her grandmother owned. But come to find out, grandma has been turned into a vampire, and she tries to solve the mystery of, who tried to kill her, because she became a vampire due to a vampire trying to save her from dying. It wasn't that they were trying to turn her necessarily, just to be turning her, but because she was near death and they wanted to save her. And there's a vampire knitting group. And all the different vampires keep knitting sweaters for the girl, who eventually finds out that she's actually a witch. And things happen, and there's a couple small little twists in there. Another Man's Moccasins is the 4th Walt Longmire book. I have a huge crush on Henry Standing Bear, who happened to be played by Lou Diamond Phillips in the TV show. Western mystery, police thriller kind of thing. This one was really good because it divided between Wyoming and Vietnam. So you could kind of see parallels between his life when he was a soldier and his life now as the sheriff. So that one was pretty interesting. Christmas Cocoa Murder. Again, 3 novellas. This time all revolve around hot chocolate, cocoa, whatever, Christmas time. Marshmallow Malice, Candy King Crime, and Botched Butterscotch. 2 novellas and a novel, all from the Amish Candy Shop mysteries. Set in Ohio in an Amish area. This girl comes from New York to stay with her grandmother after her grandfather passes away.
and basically runs the candy shop and solves murders. Who knew there were so many murders in Amish country? James Patterson, The 20th Victim, is book 20 in the Women's Murder Club series. This one wasn't as good as some of the previous books. I think it's just I wasn't as excited about the topic. There was a group of assassins killing drug dealers, basically. And I don't know, it just didn't flip my switch. The Damned by Renee Ahdieh. It's the sequel to The Beautiful, and apparently there's going to be a third book. It was okay. I'm a big vampire fan, but this one, they brought in a fae element. And why ruin a good vampire story by putting fucking fairies in there? I don't like the fae. Stop ruining good books by putting fae in them. Glass Castle is a memoir. Jeanette Walls became a writer after basically growing up in Appalachian area. Parents had mental illness. She went through some abusive stuff. Seems to have come out okay. She's, writing and things. So at least that part's been good for her. Exceptional is very interesting. I really liked it. It's kind of sci-fi, dystopian. You have in the society, they created this vaccine, which was really more of a virus, and they inoculated everybody with it. And there are people who now are born with these accentuated abilities, kind of like superheroes, we'll say. They've got these powers. And then you've got the people who don't. They're the ordinaries. You got the exceptionals and the ordinaries. And in this book, a girl who is an ordinary wants to prove to herself, I don't know what she's trying to prove to herself, wants to prove something to herself. So she jumps the stream over into exceptional territory, and she's planning on jumping back, but she gets caught. And just prior to this, she saw some exceptional boys jump over into the ordinary side and then jump back, and then they ran off into the woods. And the one boy had noticed her. So then when she was captured, he then claimed her. Because apparently ordinaries who are taken into the city where the exceptionals live. Meow. Oh, behave. They're basically paired up and mated to people, to exceptionals, because exceptionals mating with exceptionals most of the time can't carry a baby to term. But if they mate with an ordinary, then that's how they keep repopulating. Because an ordinary who mates with an exceptional gives birth to an exceptional. Anyway, long story, complicated stuff. Things happen, and it leaves you on a cliffhanger. So, again, I'm going to have to look for the next book in the series because this is what I want to finish. One Crazy Summer, PSB 11, Gone Crazy in Alabama, is the Gaither Sisters trilogy. One Crazy Summer, the girls they leave their home in New York and go out to Oakland, California to see their mother. And basically get mixed up in the Black Panther movement. At the end of that, they're on the plane, they get home, PSB 11 picks up where they're picking them up at the airport, and the girls are writing back to their mother things that are happening and whatever. And the oldest daughter is basically trying to act older than she is. And the mother keeps saying, P.S. be 11. You know, don't rush to grow up. Just, be 11. And be your age. Be a kid while you're a kid. And then Gone Crazy in Alabama, they go down to Alabama to see their grandmother and spend the summer. And there's a feud between the grandmother and her sister, and they live like on opposite sides of the creek. And then a tornado comes, and one of the daughters is missing, and there's a whole thing there. Pretty good series. I enjoyed it. I read it in like all 3 books within a couple days. The Merriest Magnolia is a book. It's one of the Magnolia Sisters, I think is the name of the series. It's not the first one in the series. I picked it up because I needed a book with a mailbox on the cover. But you can read it without reading any other in the series. The woman basically has come home to the town, and she's an artist, and her father passed, who was also an artist, and he kind of ran things in the town. And this guy that she used to date, the food in the crock pot's probably hot. You can have some of that if you want. What was I saying? Oh yeah, this guy that she used to go out with has come back to town, and he's wanting to buy up all this property and turn it into kind of a rich people's resort kind of area. And she's wanting to keep it, small town with a tourist trade and small businesses and things like that, where he wants to tear down everything and put in condos and expensive boutiques and stuff like that. Basically, they want opposite things. And of course, it becomes a second chance romance because they hit it off and get back together and hanky panky. And in the end, resolve their differences, I guess. They both find things that they didn't know they wanted. Our Harlem, 7 days of cooking, music, and soul at the Red Rooster. This is Marcus Samuelson basically doing, I want to say it's more of a podcast than a book. There's no print version. It's just an audible version. But over the course of 7 days, he talks to people in the Harlem community about the history of Harlem, about the culture in the Harlem area, and where they think the community is going, the multiculturalism, is it gentrification coming in? Is it, what's going on here, and how things in Harlem kind of set the trend for things other places, and the music and the food and basically the soul of the community. And it was really interesting listening to the people talk about this different stuff. I think I would have maybe preferred it as a television show where they're like, you could actually see them doing the cooking instead of having them describe the cooking, and see the fashion rather than have them just talk about fashion. I think it really needed a visual medium. Charlene Harris, An Easy Death. Charlene Harris is the one that wrote the Sookie Stackhouse books that became the True Blood TV show. Well, this is her Gunny Rose series. This is the first book. Gunny Rose is kind of an alternate history as well. I seem to have picked up several of those over the year. apparently something has happened and the United States has been divided up, and she's in the Texoma area, and she helps people get from place to place. She's kind of like I don't know, a bodyguard for hire kind of thing. And she's helping transport this family, and they get ambushed, and the other people she works with are murdered, and some of the people she's trying to transport are murdered. She manages to get what's left of the family to where they were going through a lot of struggle. And when she finally makes it back home, these characters, there's a male and a female. They're from the Russian part of the United States. Um, they are wizards, because all the Russians apparently are wizards, because they're all descended from Rasputin. And apparently the Romanovs hadn't been killed, because one of them is now like in charge. But um, if you know about the history of the Romanovs, the son Alexei had hemophilia, and in this case he's also got it, although they don't call it that, but he's got a disease, and they keep trying to produce an heir, and they either miscarry or they're born diseased and die. So, these two wizard people are trying to track down um like a brother or some sort of relation, an uncle, something, who might be able to cure the guy. And they track down Gunny to be their person to help track and find this person they're looking for. And there's some paranormal stuff and some supernatural stuff, and there's alternate history and dystopian, and I guess kind of a little bit of romance-ish. I mean, they do have sex, so I guess a little bit of a romance. It doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. There's so many different genres and elements thrown in and mixed together. I don't know, it's hard. History of bourbon, exactly what it sounds like. It's from the Great Courses. It's basically 10 lectures about the history of bourbon. And it talked about things I didn't know. So it was interesting, and I felt like I learned stuff. A graphic novel called Witchy. Unfortunately, there isn't a second volume out right now, but apparently you can read the next 2 chapters online. I haven't done that yet. I want more. I want to finish the story because it kind of leaves you hanging. I don't like that. I want to be able to finish the story. I want to know that the rest of the story is available for me to pick it up and read it. The artwork's okay. It's not great. The story is interesting, but I'm a little confused on a couple things. Like, the witch power, the longer your hair is, the more power you have. But if your hair is deemed to be too long, they kill you. But the more powerful witches are conscripted into the guard. So, which is it? Do you want powerful witches or not? But if you cut your hair, they'll kill you. But if your hair grows too long, they'll kill you. So, it seems rather arbitrary to make that the basis of things, because people's hair is going to grow at different rates. And how do you know if it's too long or not? And our main character hides the fact that she's got long hair. And her magic's not great. So she's kind of embarrassed to have this great long hair and bad magic. But she learns that perhaps the way that she's focusing her magic isn't right. Anyway, whatever. It kind of leaves you hanging. They're getting ready to start this big rebellion, and it ends. I want to know what happens. Twisted Visions, The Art of Junji Ito. Oh my god. The artwork is stunning. Absolutely stunning. I checked this one out from the library, and amazing. It's beautiful. Um, Junji Ito does a lot of horror manga and does the artwork. And this is like selected pieces of his art. And there's an interview with him about, how does he create his characters and where does his inspiration come from, and, what kind of supplies does he use and things like that. And it's interesting. It's neat to see the insight, the inner workings of the artist's mind, and then to see the stunning artwork. Wow. I can make this promise. This is another one that I heard about through Bookish Realm. So Ashley, thank you. You have given me some really good ones to read. Soleil, the Gaither Sisters trilogy, I can make this promise. This one is about a young girl who, her father is Caucasian, her mother is Native American. She lives in Washington State. When she's at school, she gets questioned, "Where are you from?" And she's like, "What do you mean? I'm from Washington." And, "No, where are you from?" "I live in the United States. I'm from the United States." And then they're like, "Well, what tribe?" And she's like, "I don't know, because we never talk about it." Her mother never discusses it with her. And one day, she and her friends are, they want to make popsicles, and they can't find the popsicle molds. So they go up to the attic to see if they got stuck up in there, and they find this box. And in this box are photographs and letters, and the letters are signed Love, Edith. Now, our main character, her name is Edie, so she's named after this Edith person. And she can't figure out who she is, who this Edith person is, and she knows that there's a relation because she looks so much like her. And so then it becomes then the mystery is, who is Edith? And she goes on this journey of self-discovery while trying to find out who Edith is. And it's really good. Then she's, she doesn't trust her parents because she feels like they lied to her. And her one friend is like, "No, talk to your parents, I'm sure it's not what you think." And then the other friend is seeing somebody else, is making another friend that's not part of their group, who has been pretty much abusive to Edie ever since they were children. A lot of prejudice going on. A lot of racism going on through this character. And so there's that element to deal with, all in the girl who's like 12 years old. So, there's that whole friendship. Are we really friends? Are we not friends? How can you be friends with her and with me? If you want to be friends with me, then we can't hang out with her because she is abusive to me. And so there's all that kind of stuff going on. Llewellyn's Little Book of Unicorns. I don't know what to do with this one. It's kind of a self-help book. It's new agey. I don't want to say occult necessarily. Um, it's about finding your inner unicorn and what makes you sparkle. Fine. It's, gives some history of the unicorn, and then it talks about how to find your unicorn. But it seems like it, or maybe it's just me, seems like some of the things that are said are contradictory to each other. And then she gives these exercises to do. And in the middle of explaining, she goes off on a tangent about how when she did this activity, this is what happened to her. And then she doesn't necessarily come back to finish telling you what you're supposed to do. I'm like, huh? There were a few parts that I thought might be useful to me. There was a section on crystals, which I was interested in. However, she picked obscure crystals. Like there's one that she talked about that is only found in one location in Russia. Yeah, you're not going to find that everywhere. You're not going to have access to that. So why are you presenting that crystal instead of something that people are going to have access to? I don't know. And she talks about making this unicorn mist. And she tells you to put, 1 to 2 drops of the various essences in whatever essences you like. Well, the problem with that is some of the essences are direct opposites of each other. Like, I enjoy the scent of lavender, so if I put lavender oil in, then the other scents that I enjoy, like citrus, would cancel it out. Because lavender is for relaxation and calmness and peacefulness, and citrus is for energy. If you're trying to calm down, you don't want to be smelling a citrus scent that is going to boost your energy levels. Citrus would be more of like in the morning when you're getting ready to go to work or whatever and you need a little oomph to wake up and get going. Smell some citrus. You're at home trying to unwind, getting ready to go to bed, smell some lavender. But you wouldn't put them both in the same spray. So I'm a little confused on that. She doesn't explain it very well. There's some other things that I was just like, huh? And other things I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And there are some things that she's talking about if things tend to come up multiple times, that maybe it's your unicorn trying to send you a message. And I'm like, is it, or is it just coincidence? Because like with that one book where I read about that case with the woman who was harassing people over Facebook and then murdered people, and then I saw a video pop up on YouTube. How is that a message that a unicorn would be sending me? Follow this case. The case has been, through the courts and everything. Everybody's been sentenced and what have you. So why would a unicorn be pointing me to that? Doesn't make sense. I think it's just coincidence. I watch a lot of game shows, a lot of trivia-based game shows, and several of them have had similar questions come up. That's not a unicorn trying to send me a message. That is coincidence. Not every coincidence is a message from beyond. So I don't know about that one. There are a few things in it I found of value, and there are things in it I didn't. And I think maybe I didn't get the book at the right time of my life. I don't know. It came in a book box. I read it. We're moving on. Ice and Bone, Tracking an Alaskan Serial Killer. This one was interesting. It was a case I wasn't familiar with. It was important because it talks about how, in particular, Native American, Alaskan Native women are marginalized. This talks about 6 murders, okay? 4 of them were Native Alaskan One was black and one was white. It wasn't until the white woman was murdered that the police took it serious and actually did proper police procedure and investigation, and they brought in the FBI and actually caught the guy and put him behind bars. They'd caught the guy before, but they did such crappy police work that he got off. And nobody cared because, oh, they were just natives. They're still women. They're still human. They did not deserve to die the way that this guy killed them. So, yeah, there's that. The Noel letters. Richard Paul Evans, he wrote with the Christmas box and a whole bunch of other Christmas related books. This might be the second actually in this group of books. I'm not entirely sure, but it's fine as a standalone. In fact, I don't even know if this was a second book, how the first book would have tied in. Anyway, this woman named Noelle, she's like a literary agent in New York, and she flies to Salt Lake City because her father is dying. And unfortunately, when she lands in Salt Lake City, she's met by her father's assistant and is told that he died like 4 hours earlier, while she was in the air. So she didn't get to talk to him or see him again. And so she has to deal with all the fallout from his death. And she learns a lot of stuff in the process. It's also a second chance romance because a guy that she dated back in high school has gotten divorced. She's been divorced. So they're both currently single. He's got a daughter. And they meet up and they decide they're going to go out for coffee. And then they decide maybe they'd like to see each other some more. So then they start dating. And it starts to get serious, and she decides she's going to go back to New York. And she had lost her job. They fired her, and then they came crawling back to her because the one major author that they had would not work with anybody else, would only work with her. So they came crawling back, offered her job, and she decides she's going to take it because she just can't handle being in Salt Lake City, being surrounded by her father's memory, having this guy fall in love with her. It freaks her out. And of course, everything implodes because she's making this impulsive decision to run back to New York. And ends up, it's kind of Dickensian then, in that she ends up realizing the error of her ways and finds out that this series of letters she's been receiving, where they came from and why they're important. And that turns everything around. And yeah, it was a happy ending. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Of course, my question is, why does she have to fly back to New York? Can't she just have an office and deal with reading manuscripts in Salt Lake City? She doesn't have to be in New York to read. But hey, what do I know? Her father had owned a bookstore, and so she was getting to know the bookstore. And so, I mean, that seems like perfect, bookstore, reading books, Anyway, then The Midnight Library, which was my last book of the year. Interesting, to say the least. This woman, basically everything's going wrong in her life. She's just miserable, and she finally decides she wants to die. So I guess she did like a drug overdose, and she ends up not dead yet, but almost dead, basically hanging on by her claws. ends up in this library, and it's the midnight library, and the time is always midnight. If the time starts progressing, then that means something's happening. Either she's dead, or somebody has saved her, or what have you. But she has to make the decision, basically. And while she's in this library, she first is exposed to her book of regrets. And she gets so overwhelmed with her book of regrets, and then the librarian's like, okay, here's what you can do. So all these books in here, this is your lives. These are your lives. Each book is a different version of your life. And so you can choose to explore other variations of your life. And if you find what you're looking for, you can stay in that life and what have you. And so she goes in and out of multiple lives. Each time finding something she likes, something she doesn't like. Sometimes her parents are alive, sometimes they're dead, sometimes her brother's alive, sometimes he's dead. Sometimes her best friend is alive, sometimes she's dead. All the different variations. But she can't go back and change things. She can only, experience what's going on in that particular day in that life. Or starting from that particular moment. She finds a life that she thinks she wants to stay in, and something happens and she's pulled out of that life, and a lot of things happen, and I can't really say anything else without spoiling the whole book. But essentially it's kind of a twist on the Groundhog Day scenario, where she's basically living the same life over and over and over in multiple different ways, but it's all the same life, just different universes, parallel universe. Interesting. So my last review of the year was interesting concept, and the philosophy bits were interesting as well. There's a lot of philosophy in that one. So I read 382 out of 300 books, which is 120% of my goal for last year. This year, I'm cutting the goal in half because I'm starting a new job, and my first official day is Monday. I go in for training. So I don't know what to expect. I don't know how much reading time I'm going to have with this new job. I was able to read so many because I was unemployed all year. So, when you don't have an out of the house job and you can sit and listen to books all day, and pretty much my job was making sure my dad didn't get into trouble because he had dementia and I was his caregiver. So basically I made dinner and made sure he had clean clothes and that he didn't hurt himself. I could listen to a lot of books. I could get a lot of reading done. And so here we are. I think that's going to be my wrap up. I had all these different questions written down based off of Books and Lala's year-end survey thing. And I think I pretty much covered most of these things, so I'm not even going to do that. I talked about how many books I read, 382. I talked about 102,285-ish pages because some of the audiobooks didn't have actual page numbers. It'd be like 6 pages. Well, it's not 6 pages. That's 6 discs for if you had the CD version. Which, of course, I didn't because I'm listening to them through Overdrive or Audible. So, ish on the page numbers. Most read genre, probably mysteries and thrillers. I read a lot of children's books this year with the whole Dr. Seuss thing going on. I talked about all the books I read. So, obviously, book that made me cry was Dancing at the Pity Party because I frickin' cried during the video talking about it. So, anyway, there's all of that. So I think I'm going to end the video here. It's
God, it's a couple hours long at least because I feel like I've been talking forever. And it's now after 8 o'clock in the evening. So yeah, it's a long video. I hope it'll post because I'm not going to remake it. Anyway, probably should have done this as a live stream now that I think about it. Remember to do all the YouTubey things, comment, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell icon if you want to see when I post other updates and things, blah, 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 blah. I did just post a TBR video prior to starting making this one. So if you're interested in seeing what my TBR game is, which is actually already inaccurate because I'm already planning to make changes for February, there's that. It's a much shorter video. uh, check that out. If you got any suggestions of books you think I might like based on what you've seen here, let me know. Feel free to tell me in the comments. How did you do on your yearly goal? Did you make your goal? Did you blow it out of the water? Do you need a little help getting there? It doesn't matter. It's just an arbitrary number. I would like to read this many, but if I don't, it's okay. If I read more, that's great. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Your life is not going to change based on a number you type into a computer as to the number of books you would like to read. Don't force it. That's my advice. Don't force it. If you're going to read them, you're going to read them. If you're not going to read them, you're not. So I figure out of 382, 350 are probably not Dr. Seuss. I'm going to say there was around 30 Dr. Seuss books. Definitely in the 25 to 30 range. And I did read several other children's books, but I would say out of the 382, probably close to 340-ish are not children's, like little kids' picture books. So, still quite a bit of reading. I mean, they claim that my average book length is 267 pages. So, not little books. Anyway, I will see you in the next one. I hope you all have a great 2021. Hope that it's better than 2020. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.